Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1114 of the War News stream. And today we have massive news that Putin has stepped in the dog pile. Apparently, Russia rejected the Ukraine ceasefire deal today, triggering severe sanctions on Russia. And also, U.S. officials have restarted missile deliveries to Ukraine, the high-powered missiles, the GLSDB. And also, Belarus is threatening NATO forces with attack after Russia has basically told them to do so. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as shocking news indeed, has come out today that the Russian Federation has openly denied the ceasefire request by the state of Ukraine and the United States of America in this day of the war. It is major news. It is news that we actually did not expect in some cases, at least a couple of weeks ago, but it appears that the United States has already moved into slamming the Russian Federation with sanctions and providing the state of Ukraine with larger and even more powerful weapon systems in a more voluminous number to deal with the Russian Federation's armed forces on the battlefield and to strike them where it really counts. The news has been absolutely wild today, and honestly a complete 180 from the developments that we've been seeing over the past few days, and it's certainly showing us at this point that the Russian Federation will most likely be in for the trip to hell for the large part at this point, as it appears that they have now made it very clear that they would like to be broiling in the depths of hell along with the other nations of the past that didn't really bode too well in these kinds of circumstances. We were also able to hear that the Republic of Belarus has directly threatened NATO once again with war, as it does appear that the Russian Federation and the Belarusians are once again ramping up the fiery warlike rhetorics against NATO as they are attempting to once again ensure that they will be able to achieve their objectives in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, the Polish have requested the United States of America to deploy nuclear weapons inside of their country as a form of deterrent against the Russian Federation and future retaliation or aggression directed at the European Union or Poland specifically through the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization. We've also been able to hear that Volkswagen is now once again preparing to create vehicles that can travel to Warsaw on one tank, as we have been able to see that the Volkswagen company is now beginning to militarize itself, and some of the larger industrial plants of Volkswagen are now being converted to wartime production. Meanwhile, we've been able to see that the state of Ukraine has been able to gain some frontline successes around the area of Pokrovsk, as Ukrainian forces declared that they are now completely in control of the town of Shevchenko, south of Pokrovsk. We have also been able to hear significant news from the town of Toretsk, where we've been able to see that major fighting has still been occurring, and it appears that the Ukrainians are still on the upper hand. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation has not really had an active day inside of the Kursk Oblast, as we have gotten no news, updates, or developments from either side about the current situation inside of Kursk at this moment. Outside of the Ukrainian or European situation, we've been able to hear of a couple of more interesting things. We've been able to hear that the Chinese have started to finally test and field, at least in developmental purposes, the floating barges that they have that will help them to be able to conduct a naval invasion of the island of Taiwan. We've also been able to see that the United States of America's president has once again reiterated that his relationship with North Korea is good in the midst of them threatening nuclear war over military exercises on the Korean Peninsula. We've also been able to see that the Israelis have conducted a bombing operation today inside of Damascus, thanks to the Israeli Air Force, against terrorist forces that are now being harbored and supported by the Jelani government. We have also been able to hear as well inside of Panama that the United States of America is still continuing to pursue the attempt at retaking the Panama Canal. Currently, we do not know a lot about the details of that operation at this time, or for the fact why in the world the United States is still pursuing it. But we will be talking about that a lot more later on in the stream. But we have a lot of news, a load of news, as a matter of fact, and I think that many of y'all probably are getting the gist, getting the idea, at least to this point, that tonight it's going to be mostly focused on one thing, which was the diplomatic developments today in between the United States and the Russian Federation, and the actual development of the supposed peace agreement that was supposed to be making its way around at this point in time. Now, let us talk a little bit about the details of what led up to this today, so that way we can get a good understanding of what we're talking about right now. Many of y'all know that the war in Ukraine has been going on for 1,114 days as of right now. This is the 1,114th day since the Russian Federation's armed forces advanced across the border on February 24th of 2022 into the state of Ukraine and began the actual war, the full-on war that we've been watching since then. The Russian Federation has made it very clear throughout the entirety of the war that they have major battlefield objectives that they're looking to achieve inside the state of Ukraine, and they're largely looking for the removal of the Ukrainian government, the demilitarization of the state of Ukraine, the largely Russian alignment of the state of Ukraine, and also the control of a large area of southern Ukraine called the Donbass, as well as Crimea, for strategic and resource reasons into the future. The Russian Federation has made it clear time and time again throughout the course of those 3 years, whenever the Ukrainians or the Turks would attempt to try and start peace negotiations to see that there was maybe a ceasefire or an end to the active fighting, the Russian Federation made it incredibly clear each time that unless if the Ukrainians were willing to unconditionally surrender, meaning that they would have to lay down their arms and stop fighting for good, they were not willing to go into a ceasefire at any given point. The President of the United States was elected in November of 2024 and came into office in late January of 2025 this year, and stated that he would be able to bring the war in Ukraine to an end because he, according to his own words, spoke to the President of the Russian Federation, and the President of the Russian Federation said that he truly wanted peace. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has never known anything but peace. He was born into a peaceful family. No domestic abuse or violence was ever seen in that family. He lived in peaceful streets. Many people know that the Soviet Union, towards the latter end of its lifespan, and the Russian Federation in the 90s was, of course, a very peace-loving place. There was absolutely no crime or vagrants that was ever conducted inside of the Russian Federation or the Soviet Union. And since Putin has been president, he has only conducted peaceful actions. He has conducted peacekeeping operations inside of Chechnya multiple times. He has, in fact, sent the army of Russia to do a welfare check on Georgia. He even, in his kindness, kindness, ensured that he would keep the port of Sevastopol under Russian control to stop the Ukrainians from having to be absorbed with such high maintenance costs of having to maintain that port, and not only that, supported the people of Donetsk and Luhansk, supposedly, and having a little gallivant through the local fields and getting the frolic in the flowers. He has been nothing but a peace-loving president, according to the President of the United States and according to the President of the Russian Federation himself. With this in mind, the President of the United States was fairly confident, at least according to his public statements, that he would be able to send a diplomatic delegation to the Russian Federation after the ceasefire arrangement was agreed between Ukraine and the U.S., and the Russians would accept it outright. The problem is that it already looked like there was a lot of cracks in that concept, at least at this point, that we were already starting to see. The President of the United States openly started to make threats against the Russian Federation if they were to not accept the ceasefire proposal. According to a very quote from the President of the United States, we could do things very bad for Russia, but I don't want to do that because I want to see peace. This comes as a special envoy was arriving in the Russian Federation at that very moment and would begin negotiations with the Russians to see if they were willing to accept the ceasefire agreement or not. Meanwhile, over in Moscow, while the president was making those very statements, we were able to hear that the delegation, the U.S.-led diplomatic delegation, was arriving in Moscow at that very moment. And the chief negotiator of the Russian diplomatic contingent, which was going to arrive at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, made this statement to Russia One, which is a Russian news organization, about what he thinks at this point and what his negotiating stance is on the ceasefire arrangement. And so I'm going to be reading off the subtitles here, but here is the clip and also the subtitles with me reading over it. Am I correct in understanding that from our side this sounds like we're rejecting the deal? The agreements reached on the temporary ceasefire are nothing more than a brief pause for Ukrainian troops. Nothing else. These kinds of steps, which only mimic peace efforts, are useless to everyone. And that was the official...
They never wanted a ceasefire, man. They never wanted one. These guys right here are repeating exactly what Putin is saying behind closed doors. They don't see any advantage to it because they plan to keep the war going indefinitely until they force Ukraine to collapse. That's their goal. So they would have never actually given into this. Like any inclination in the public that Putin's given that they were somehow open to a ceasefire, it was all just for the cameras. That was totally it.
It was all for the cameras. It was all largely for a public psyop for the large part. And it appears that the head negotiator of the Russian delegation already made it clear before the U.S. delegation had even made it to the embassy in Moscow that they were not willing to really even entertain the concept of a ceasefire at this point, and that it would only benefit the Ukrainians. So why stop the war? The war should keep going. Now, I know a lot of people with much more knowledge than ourselves, who maybe read headlines every hour a day or so, or maybe even less than that, will tell us that this is not the case, and that Putin has openly accepted the ceasefire at this very moment, and the war is ended. I have to say that y'all have to be wrong, because I've seen a lot of Russians getting blown to smithereens today on the front lines, so if the ceasefire went into effect immediately, I'm not seeing it on the front lines. Another thing is that this is the chief negotiator of the Russian Federation, and the negotiators have a lot of leeway with what they're able to do and say, and largely also have had a general guideline of what both leaders are looking for. The President of the United States told the delegation team that we sent exactly what we were looking for and what we'd be willing to give on and what we wouldn't be willing to give on. And the rest is up to that negotiating team. Putin also had the same talk with his chief negotiator right here and told him what he was willing to look for and what he wasn't willing to look for, and then sent him on his way to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. And this is exactly what Putin told him to have the stance as. The war is not worth ending right now. This is nothing more than a break for the Ukrainians, and the war is going to keep going, and they're not even willing at looking at a ceasefire agreement. But just in case, if the United States is willing to accept a ceasefire agreement on behalf of Ukraine at all costs, they did lay out a list of prerequisites for the ceasefire. Would y'all like to hear them? Of course you would like to hear them. This is what we have been able to hear today from the Russian Federation. And this is specifically reported as well by Reuters, a fairly credible source. Reuters reports that Russia has presented the United States with its list of demands for a deal to end the ongoing war in Ukraine and reset diplomatic relations with Washington, with officials stating that the list is broad and similar to previous demands made to Ukraine, the U.S., and NATO. In short, to let you all know what the previous demands have been, it's practically been that the Ukrainians have to unconditionally surrender for a ceasefire ceasefire to even come into effect. And at that point, if the Ukrainians have pretty much unconditionally surrendered in every way that counts, there isn't anything to get into a peace negotiation with. The Russians already won by just getting into the ceasefire at that point. The terms are said to include no membership in NATO for Ukraine, which has already been understood by both sides, but the deal breaker is an agreement not to deploy foreign troops or a peacekeeping force to Ukraine after the war, and international recognition of Russia's claim to Crimea, as well as the regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia in southeastern Ukraine. Not saying that the conflict freezes on the front lines, they actually demand that the United States recognizes the Russian Federation's claim to the rest of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, which they currently do not control. Meaning that the Russian Federation is not asking for the front line to be frozen or for themselves to give up land in the sake of good faith. They're actually asking for the United States and Ukraine to hand over even more land, and a very significant amount of land at that, so that way the Russian Federation is even willing to get into a ceasefire. But if you do not believe me, because I know that many people don't just believe talking heads on the internet, we could come up with anything. I can actually get you all the direct statements that Putin made on the matter today in his own words right here. I'm going to read the subtitles so that way we can make sure that people can hear it. Actually, really quickly, I believe this actually had a dub over it, so I'll play it right here for all of y'all so that way y'all can hear it in your own ears, exactly what Putin said today in a press conference that he had with Lukashenko by his side. So here are the statements. Oh, wait, hang on, sorry. There was a different clip that I was thinking about there. Let me make sure to read the subtitles here. And we're in favor, but there are nuances. And there you have it. He's rejecting the ceasefire. Like, you can just go off the first sentence. If he was accepting the ceasefire, there wouldn't be a but. He would say, we've accepted the ceasefire, and we're going to end the fighting. And we'll move straight into negotiating. He said, I think we're in favor of a ceasefire, but everyone has to meet our demands before we get into a ceasefire. That's what he's saying. So here comes all the laundry list items that Putin says the U.S. and Ukraine have to adhere to for the great and mighty Russian Federation, which is now using mules on the front line, to even get into a ceasefire, to even talk about peace at this point. What they are. First, what are we going to do with this section of the wedge in the Kursk region? If we cease hostilities for 30 days, what does that mean? That everyone who's in there will leave without a fight? Are we supposed to let them out of there after they committed massive crimes against civilians? Or the Ukrainian leadership will give us a command to lay down our arms? Just surrender? How will it be? It's unclear. And how will other issues be addressed at all across all lines of contact? And that's almost 2,000 kilometers. And there, as you know, Russian troops are advancing in almost all areas of contact. And there, too, conditions are being created for us to blockade entire, fairly large units. So those 30 days are going to be used as, so that in Ukraine continues this forced mobilization in order to supply weapons there for newly mobilized units to be trained, or none of this will be done. The question then arises, what's it going to be? How will verification controls be handled? How we can, and how do we make sure that nothing like this happens? Control, how will it be in organization?
You know what the entire impression I'm getting from this? Once again, remember, there was an envoy that was going to Russia to talk this ceasefire situation over. They were going there to hear out Putin's side of the situation and present the Ukrainian side that's already been agreed to when it comes to the ceasefire. What Putin is doing right here is not only is he rejecting the ceasefire, but he's already setting it up in the public's eye to go ahead and basically make it permanent. They're not going to agree to anything unless Ukraine surrenders. He's making an appeal to the public. If he was actually serious about negotiating a ceasefire on their terms, he would be discussing that behind closed doors and not trying to litigate this in front of the entire Russian public.
And I would have to agree with Matthew on that greatly. This is something that Putin is doing not only publicly to the Russian public, but it's becoming incredibly clear he's not willing to accept a ceasefire at all. Listen to the laundry list. Now, let's just put this out there again, because there's been a lot of misunderstandings, I think, from people who may have less than average intelligence out there today about what Putin actually said and what he did. If he accepted the ceasefire, this video would have been this long. Then that's it. It would have been 2 seconds long, and that would have been the end. There was no end to this. It was a 2-minute long monologue by Putin on all of the different conditions that the United States and Ukraine would have to agree to even get to a ceasefire. And a lot of these are absolutely insane. Like, they're truly insane and paramount to absolute surrender. One thing that Putin said is that the Ukrainians in this one video here would not be allowed to mobilize or even really keep a standing army. Once again, largely pushing for the idea that Ukraine has to lay down their arms entirely while the Russians don't have to get into a ceasefire. That is quite truly capitulation. That is what is called an unconditional surrender. If a country is forced to lay down their arms across the board and completely disband their armed force to get into a ceasefire, that is an unconditional surrender. That means that this ceasefire isn't one to get into a peace negotiation. This means that the ceasefire is moving into the next phase where the Russians have already won. And the peace treaty or the peace negotiations aren't actually negotiating on how to end the war amenably. The peace negotiations are talking about exactly how Russia is going to carve up Ukraine. That is exactly what Putin is looking for again, and it is showing that he is not willing to achieve peace. The Ukrainians went into this as a non-preconditional ceasefire. The Ukrainians are not asking for anything from Russia to get into this ceasefire. Not a single thing. They presented an unconditional 30-day ceasefire with absolutely no requirements by Ukraine that the Russians have to fulfill to get into that ceasefire. All the Russians had to do was say yes, and it would have been over. The ceasefire would be in effect right now. It probably would have been a couple of days or a week from now. But it would be in the process of being put in place. And now we see, much like we've always seen through the war, and a lot of people have always wanted to be blind to, that the Russian Federation actually isn't wanting peace. They want peace if it means they've won. That's the only time they want peace. And everyone wants peace where you win. That's called winning. When the war ends and you've won, there's no more war because you've won. And that's what Putin wants. Basically, for the Ukrainians to even get to a point where there is no more shooting in Ukraine, they have to give up. That's what Putin wants right here and right now. And a lot of people have been talking about this rejection of the ceasefire that Putin has made today and insist that it is done on Russia's terms only. F America, F Ukraine is what the Russians are saying. We only want it done on our terms, and it's our way or the highway. That's it. And a lot of people have been wondering, or really talking about this more so, and what this will lead to into the future. And it seems as though, almost unanimously, a large majority of people have said that Putin will never have a ceasefire. Others are saying that Putin will do it only for Ukraine's surrender. Some people said, we may see sudden change soon on the Russians' end due to some extra actions that the United States is taking right now. And some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, I got to say that this is one of the things that we predicted way back in August of last year. And I've seen, of course, last night we said we wouldn't take a lot of credit, but considering that a lot of people were like, oh, no, you should take credit, we'll take a little bit of credit. This is largely the way that we planned it out on air, or largely game planned it out a long time ago, really before even August. This was about at the beginning of last year, around March, and we said that this was the way it would go. There's really just no other way for it to turn out. And it looks like it's going exactly down that path. Of course, due to the messy nature of how it finally got to the inevitable end conclusion that we assumed 6 months ago, we started to even have a lot of lack of faith in our own assessment or analysis of the situation, and started to back off of that idea of thinking. But it now appears that that was the dead-on, hole-in-one analysis right there that was just absolutely dead on the nail. And it looks like it may be true that as long as Putin is there, there may not be an actual chance of having a ceasefire or an end to the war in Ukraine at all. And so, Matthew, what are you thinking about it, and what is everyone else thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 63% of the audience said Putin will never have a ceasefire, while 24% said Putin will do it only for Ukraine's surrender, and 9% said we may see a sudden change in Russia soon based on the U.S. response. And honestly, here's one thing we have to get straight first of all. A ceasefire is not ending the war. That is just a cessation of hostilities for a certain period of time to start negotiations. That's the purpose of a ceasefire. And Putin is trying to find a ceasefire as ending the war on Russia's terms. That is not a ceasefire. That is a total surrender by Ukraine. And Putin is trying to mischaracterize it to make it seem like it makes sense, but it really makes no sense at all. So yeah, obviously Putin would do it for Ukraine's surrender, but that's not the whole purpose of a ceasefire. And Ukraine is not going to surrender under any circumstance. That is not going to be happening. I don't think even the U.S. is proposing that Ukraine just surrender. I don't think that's on their side either. So I'm with the 63%. Putin will never have a ceasefire, and he's making it very clear right now that while he's basically saying no in the public, he's trying to ride the fence a little bit to avoid the U.S. wrath from his decision, because he knows that with the sanctions already being slapped on Russia, it's not going to go good for them in the future based on what we're seeing right now. And I'm pretty confident that it's only going to get worse for them economically and militarily as well. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, I don't think there ever will be a ceasefire, because the Russians at this point, with Putin at the helm, are never going to get to the point where I think they're going to ever see eye to eye with Ukraine or the United States or the West at large. It doesn't look like that's ever going to happen, because every single time anyone actually gives a good, hearty attempt at trying to get a peace pushed forward, which means that there has to be a ceasefire so that way everything settles down and then they can talk about it in a more clinical way. Every single time the Russians go, well, if you just give up and surrender, then we can get to talking about ending the war, which means that the war is already ended when you get to a ceasefire. It is a very easy thing to understand, maybe complex for some people, but if you pretty much have given in to all of Russia's terms that would be hammered out in a peace negotiation during a ceasefire before you even get into a ceasefire, that means that you were unconditionally surrendering before the war ends, because that ceasefire under the Russians' mindset isn't going to be a temporary ceasefire where you then talk about what is actually going to be happening now that there's a ceasefire in effect and what the end of the war will truly look like. Under a Russian mindset, a ceasefire is the end of the war. It's over. You've already agreed to everything that Russia wants. There's no room for negotiation. If you want the war to end, agree to our terms or the war is going to keep going. We are not willing to talk about anything. We are not willing to negotiate anything. We are simply going to push for our terms alone, and you either agree to them at face value or we keep the war going. That's what the Russians are at right now. The United States is on the mindset that any actual negotiating team would have, which is we bring forward a ceasefire and then we begin negotiations. This is such an ass-backwards way that the Russians are going about this. This is what the United States did to Germany and Japan in World War II. And we were beating the hell out of them by the time we started doing that. When it came around to March, April, and May of 1945, and the Nazi Germans were truly defeated, that is when we started to attempt to push for an unconditional surrender. Accept all of our terms, and that's it. Or we keep this going until we completely destroy whatever is going to be left of Germany at this point. The choice was theirs. And the Germans kept it going until Hitler offed himself in April 29th of 1945. And then Karl Dönitz, because everyone else tried to flee, Karl Dönitz, who was the admiral of the Kriegsmarine, signed the unconditional surrender on May 8th of 1945. That is the way the United States did a ceasefire, if you want to call it that, against Nazi Germany in World War II. We did the same thing against Japan in World War II as well. We nuked them twice, and then we said, you can either accept these conditions, or we're going to keep nuking y'all, and we're also going to invade the mainland. The choice is yours. And then we sailed a giant fleet of warships into Tokyo Bay, and then we had the Japanese come on board the vessel and sign the peace treaty, which was quite truly a ceasefire in that sense. They agreed to all of our terms up front and also agreed to end the fighting on that very day, which was, I believe, August 9th of 1945, if I remember correctly. But beyond that, that is how a country operates when they're winning a war and they are going to go to absolute victory. That is an unconditional victory mindset, is you're going to agree to our terms and that's the only way the war is going to end. We are not willing to negotiate it. We are not willing to talk about it. It's these terms or nothing. Take it or leave it. That's not at all what the United States is going to stand for. That's not at all what Ukraine is going to stand for. And that's not what our amazing allies in Europe are going to stand for either. The war will keep going until Putin's stupid head is beaten quite significantly into finally understanding either that a peace treaty will be signed and it will be a fair peace treaty, or Putin and the Russian government will cease to exist. It can be one or the other, but the Russians are going to be going down a very nasty course of action at this point with what's going on in the war in Ukraine, having such a dog-headed mindset, especially when the Russian Federation's armed forces are generally doing poorly everywhere but Kursk right now. The Russians are losing ground in literally every single direction. They are losing ground in Kupiansk. They are losing ground in the Severonsky Forest. They are losing ground, crazily enough, in Chasiv Yar. They are losing ground in Toretsk. They are losing ground in Pokrovsk. They are losing ground wherever there is an active battle going, except for Kursk. So if the Russians think that they're going to be able to manage winning the war in the end, they are absolutely delusional. And I think at this point, the Russian government has to be delusional because there is a method to the madness with this. They really do think that they can just strongman this into pretty much making the West submit, but the West is not going to submit. Anyone with a brain would know that we hold the superior and numerical advantages necessary to put the Russians underground. And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to stop our support for Ukraine just for the fact that we would want to try and appease the Russians in any way, shape, or form. But
and also, by the way, I think all this talk by Putin that they're gaining ground and they're actually making progress. We discussed this yesterday, actually, and I think some people are on the fence about it. Like I said, I don't think Putin truly believes that. And once again, that's just propaganda. I think he's using the line that they're winning in Kursk to justify rejecting the ceasefire. Because, of course, the real reason he's rejecting it is because he wants to destroy Ukraine. He wants to take the whole place over. And unless he can install a puppet and get rid of Zelenskyy, then that's going to be very hard to do. So they have to keep the meat grinder going. They have to keep plowing through Ukraine in their heads. They think they're plowing through Ukraine, and they're really not. They're just in a meat grinder situation. But they're thinking we need to go all in. And also, by the way, Putin might be worried that if he accepts a ceasefire, it makes it look like the Russians are losing. He might think that in his head as well. And also, there's the looming economic issue that if they stop the war suddenly, that could also cause a shock effect to the Russian economy and cause it to collapse right now. So I think he's believing in his head and Putin's head. Keep the war going, take your chances with that, and we're not going to stop for even 30 days. Because if they stop for 30 days, that could also trigger a collapse in the Russian economy as well, because that stops the war industry for 30 days unless they decide to ramp up their production of military equipment. So the whole thing is precarious, but Russia does not want to stop the war. That's the overall goal here.
It really is the goal of Putin at this point to see that that's pushed through. And I see some people saying some things, and I just want to address them really quickly. Some people are saying I am wrong because CBS says the Russians are making ground. One, I don't know why I'm still addressing this 3 years in. Mainstream news organizations are incredibly lackluster in their research abilities or their reporting abilities. They are horrendous. Like, I just got to say that across the board. CBS is saying that the Russians are advancing in Kursk, and then they're extrapolating that to talk about the entire 700-mile-long front line that's inside of Ukraine. There's a very big difference. You see, when in a war, like for example World War II, there are totally different front lines that exist in a war like that. Once again, there's not just one battle going on in a place like, say, World War II or Ukraine. There is a multitude of battles going on in any given moment. And so while the Germans are possibly steamrolling France, the Italians are getting their asses beat in Ethiopia. While the Germans are steamrolling the Soviets, the United States is beating Japan's ass at Midway. So just because one battle is being won somewhere doesn't mean that the entire war is being lost by everyone everywhere else. That is entire BS. Like, that is just straight up lies and not even being factual. And that's another thing that a lot of people keep on coming on here and going, oh, well, this YouTube channel says that Ukraine's losing ground and they're losing the war. And those people don't know how to do analysis, because you don't measure the progress of a war by one battle. If you did, then the U.S. was cooked at Pearl Harbor and should have just surrendered to the Japanese, because we got ganked at Pearl Harbor. Nobody even knew what was going on. Nobody could even shoot at the Japanese aircraft hardly, because all of the ammunition was still locked up on board the warships with a lock and key. And any of the Armory officers were on shore at Sunday service. You could claim that the United States should have just given up right then and there. You could claim that the United States should have given up after the Philippines was taken entirely, and multiple U.S. soldiers of the tens of thousands were forced on the Bataan Death March by the Imperial Japanese Army. You could have said that the U.S. should have given up right then and there. You could have said that France should have given up when the Germans steamrolled all of France. You could have said that the British should have given up when the Germans forced the British Expeditionary Expeditionary Force out of Dunkirk, and the British had absolutely no military equipment at that point for the British Army. You could have made that argument day in and day out whenever anyone was losing a battle, and guess what? Out of all those defeats that I just listed right there, the West ended up, well, really the Allies, ended up winning the war. We lost plenty of battles, like quite a good bit, especially at the start, but in the end, we won. That's the big difference in between an amateur and a real analyst, is that because one battle is being lost, and there truly is only one being lost right now, that doesn't mean that it's so jover for the Ukrainians. And that's not when you pull out the little doomer vaporwave music track of like Little Dark Age or something and start talking about it was so good for such a long time and it's over now. That's not what you do, because the war is still going on. The Ukrainians are winning on multiple fronts. We have actual proof of it today. We've had proof of it for a week or a week and a half at this point. And I just got to say this, like, I don't mean to sound like a narcissist if it comes off this way, but I'm fairly good at the job I do. I look at every single mile of the front line, and if there is even a hairpin movement of it, I observe it and know. We don't report all of the little movements. A lot of them are microscopic, but there are movements every day. Some of them in Russia's favor. Most of them right now are in Ukraine's favor. In every single major battlefield in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back. It's not the other way around. There is currently several battles going on in Ukraine. The Battle of Kupiansk, the Battle of the Severonsky Forest, the Battle of Ceasefire, the Battle of Toretsk, and the Battle of Pokrovsk. There's also a minor one of Velika Novosilka, but that one largely has fizzled out at this point, so it does not count. And in all of those major battles, north of Pokrovsk and south of Kupiansk, the Ukrainians are winning each one right now. The Ukrainians just retook Vilshana yesterday in Kupiansk. The Ukrainians have been able to push back several city blocks in Chasiv, retaking a decent amount of that area of the city. The Ukrainians are stopping the Russians in near to the town of Torsk and Terny, meaning that the Russians are not making any ground in that area and are actively losing the battle as they are the offensive party in that battle. And in Pokrovsk, the Ukrainians just declared that they took Shevchenko today in its entirety over one night. That is winning. That's what winning on the battlefield looks like. The Russians are gaining in Kursk, though. They are in Sudzha at this point, and they also have been able to use the North Koreans to great effect. They have grinded enough of their meat that they were able to make it to the Ukrainian border near Ulanak and Guevo. But that is something that clearly is not indicative of the entire frontline situation. It's not at all. Sudzha is a small piece of the major multi-hundred-mile-long battlefield that's currently in Ukraine right now. And over most of those hundreds of miles, Ukraine is actually winning the battles right now. Russia is winning one. So if you count all 5 battles that are going on right now, all 5 major battles, and the Ukrainians are winning 4 and the Russians are winning 1, you would have to be truly brain dead, and a brain worm would have had to have eaten your brain, and you would have to be insisting that tallow makes fries healthy to start saying that the Ukrainians are losing the war. Like, that you would have to have no brain to say something like that, and just be that, like, deficient in making a logical, analytical statement. So I hope that addresses that somewhat well. Matthew, you almost did like the Johnny Dang thing. Oh, like when I said that, you're like, oh.
Oh, are you talking about tallow?
I am talking about that tallow, and the Ukrainians are beating their ass. It's like they're putting that tallow straight down their throats. But beyond that, it's clear and evident at this point the Ukrainians are winning on the front lines in Ukraine, where it actually matters the most. Like, also, that's another thing I forgot to point out. The Ukrainians are losing in Russia. They're the defending party of the conflict. The Russians are the aggressor party. Ukraine isn't even supposed to be in Russia, technically. If they lose that battle, it's no skin off of anyone's back. It's a lot of skin off of Russia's back when the entire war was supposed to be the Russians annexing most of Ukraine, and they're getting pushed back in the actual place that they're supposed to be making ground. That's the difference. That is the big difference. But beyond that, we have been able to hear, and Matthew is dying to get to this next poll. I want to make sure that we give it a little bit of a kind of like a bit of coverage for all of y'all to know what's going on right now, because I know that many people are saying, and many people may be a little bit one-sided in this, or may have a little bit of a reason to believe this based off of the statements of the President of the United States over prior, really days and weeks. But there has been a lot of interesting actions that were made inside of the U.S. government today that are a little interesting. We were able to hear from the Treasury Secretary, Besson, which I got to be honest, he's a little bit too arrogant for me. But beyond that, he did say that the current administration will not hesitate to impose the toughest sanctions against the Russian Federation if necessary to succeed in negotiations on a Ukrainian settlement. We then were able to hear, right after that, that as news was coming out earlier today, that the Russian Federation appeared to not be doing that well in the negotiations, and it looks like they were pretty much telling the United States that we have to take it or leave it. We then saw this. Now, this is something that blew my mind right here. This is a special little document. Really special document. It is incredibly special. This little document was a loophole that was put out by the last administration. And while the last administration was pro-Ukrainian, there was also a lot of European economic interest that the prior administration was attempting to weigh out. And this little letter right here from the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the Department of the Treasury was a very special kind of a letter. This gave a loophole to where Europe could continue to buy Russian gas and oil indefinitely for the large part. Well, not really indefinitely. It was really for 60 days, but it could continue to be extended indefinitely as long as it was prudent and necessary. This lapsed on the 12th of March, Eastern Daylight Time at 12:01 a.m. And the Office of the President of the United States has refused to renew this. So what this means, just to put this out there for many people, what this means is that right now, as of about a couple of hours ago, about 10, 11, 12 hours ago right now, nobody in Europe, not a soul in Europe right now, is able to buy Russian oil and gas as of right now, because the Department of the Treasury has now made it to where the sanctions have been put full on in place to where no European country, no European business can conduct business with the Russian Federation and transact any form of currency with them, meaning at this point, any purchases from the Russian Federation of oil and gas is off from this point forward, and that is not going to be changed or reversed from what we can see anytime soon. This was a deliberate action from what we could hear from the Office of the President of the United States currently to give the Russians a taste of the fire that's going to be coming soon. Because it sounds as though there's a lot of things that the Treasury Secretary Bessent, who personally I'm not really a big fan of how he carries himself, but apparently Bessent has been sitting in the background and cooking up what could only be called the devil's brew. It seems to be one of the most wicked, from what we've heard, if we were to take the wordage properly, one of the most wicked and diabolical sanction regimes that we've ever seen. It's going to nearly be akin to the kind of sanctions that the United States has against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But it seems as though this was the first piece of the sanction regimes that were coming around from the Office of the President of the United States. We then were able to hear, not long after, that the President did make some statements about the war. He also stated, shockingly enough, this is a direct quote, mind you, from the President of the United States, that there is a discussion of land and a large power plant, most likely the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, included in the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, showing wildly enough, according to Trump himself, just to make it a little bit clear because that is the current president, that he is actually looking in his negotiation team for land to actually be returned to the Ukrainians. So it doesn't appear that we're going to be meeting the Russians anywhere on their terms where they're saying that the rest of Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk have to be given to them. It actually looks like the negotiating team went to Russia today to possibly even suggest that in peace negotiations, the Russians would have to cede some land back to Ukraine. Not all of it, but some of it. And so we know for sure that this delegation did not make any ground today at all, because the delegation went out with that specific term put in their brains. We are looking to eventually have land returned to Ukraine, so under no circumstances would a U.S. delegation agree to giving Russia more of Ukraine's land before a peace negotiation even began. We then also got even more information that it appeared that the president's faith in the Russian Federation accepting a ceasefire deal was highly uncertain, as he then also stated in a direct quote, "Now we will see if Russia is in the deal, and if not, it'll be a very disappointing moment for the world," showing that he's actually not that sure if the Russians would even accept this. He has said for quite some time, weeks maybe, that Putin wants peace. And now that it's actually come down to it, to biting the bullet, he thinks that Putin isn't going to bite that bullet and that he's going to let the war keep going. And it looks like the assessment, well, at least the wavering of his faith in Putin was very dead on the nail. The Russians did not accept a ceasefire agreement today, and that brings us on into the nuclear bomb that we've been able to hear has started before we even got to now. There have been even more restrictions at this point, as the current administration, the Office of the President of the United States, is placing more restrictions on Russia's oil, gas, and banking sectors by further restricting Russian access to U.S. payment systems. That means that the United States is now already rolling out at this day, at this moment. We don't even have to wait. They have already rolled out 2 massive damning bombs against the Russian Federation economically. The complete stoppage of any kind of ability for Europe to actually conduct business with the Russians. And second, we are almost completely cutting them out of any kind of U.S. financial system that would be used to make international or cross-country payments. And also, not only that, once again, stopping oil and gas exports of largely every variety worldwide, meaning that at this point, the Russian Federation is already simmering in a pot of shit, and it's going to get a lot worse for them economically, because it seems as though Besson is already saying that there's going to be a lot more coming around the corner. So with all of that in mind, and also there's a whole bunch of other things, like we are now flooding in military equipment, we are also sending them more ground-launched small diameter bombs, and also we've heard that there's a rumor that we're going to be giving them even more ATACMS missiles, which they ran out of months ago, because they exhausted the entire allotment, I believe it was of around 64 ATACMS missiles. So with all that in mind, now it's time for us to get to the little poll. And it's not really a little one. This is actually a big one of the night. U.S. officials are placing harsh sanctions already on the Russians' oil, gas, and banking systems amid the ceasefire failure that happened today. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts. And it's actually a very split poll. It's almost right down the middle. The sanctions are either going to wreck the Russians, according to half. The sanctions will have some effect, according to the others. The sanctions will be abandoned, according to a small group. And some others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well? Now that we've gotten the whole gamut of information that's already happened today on a governmental level in the U.S. out for everyone.
So it looks like 41% said the sanctions are going to wreck the Russian economy, while 40% said the sanctions will have some effect to some degree, and 13% said the sanctions will probably be abandoned but before they're actually applied. And based on what we're seeing right now, it looks like Zelensky's gamble paid off significantly. Yeah, by accepting the ceasefire, that was a bit of a gamble, honestly, on Ukraine's side, because they really don't want to stop the war either, because they don't want to basically restart with Russia being much stronger after the ceasefire comes to an end. So it was a bit of a gamble, but it turns out it's paid off pretty well, because now it looks like Putin has basically made the U.S. president look like a fool by rejecting the ceasefire, and that has not gone over well because, of course, you don't insult the guy's ego or it goes really badly. So I'm honestly going to say that the sanctions will probably have some effect to begin with, but I think the strategy is going to be to ramp the sanctions up slowly over a month or two until they get to their worst point based on Russia's behavior. And I think that once this first round of sanctions actually takes effect, since the Russian economy is already hurting, I think it's going to have such a bad effect that's really going to turn Putin against the current U.S. president, and it's probably going to get worse even from there. And also, by the way, with the GLSDBs being returned back to Ukraine once again, they've been upgraded by the U.S. military to be resistant to Russian jamming techniques. Those are now going to be used by the Ukrainians once more to attack the Russians. And also, they're going to get more high-powered weapons like ATACMS once again. So that's also not going to play well for the Russian side either. They're going to be very pissed off with that. And it sounds like Russia is ramping up to start escalating toward the West by creating this new alliance with Belarus that they're currently flexing their muscles on as of today. So I'm with the 40%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that this is something. I think the sanctions are probably going to end up dealing some devastating damage to the Russian Federation, because the Russian Federation's economy has already entered stagflation at this point. Inflation has been skyrocketing. Economic activity has largely been almost completely stopping. And we've also seen that a lot of major companies are dealing with incredibly tough times. As of today, Gazprom has fired another 1,500 employees from their company at one of their company headquarters inside the Russian Federation. So it appears to me at this point that the Russian Federation is going to be in for a damn rough time at this point. There's no way in hell that these sanctions are going to be something that the Russians just skim off or largely just let it roll off of their shoulders. I think that they're probably going to be in for one hell of a time at this point. And another thing that I want to point out as well is that the largest partners, if you want to call them that, of the Russian Federation in terms of oil and gas, which is their biggest economic product, is Europe. That's it. Like that's quite literally it. Nobody really has done business for Russian oil. China actually prefers the sweet, sweet taste of Middle Eastern oil. Not really a lot of Russian oil. There is Russian oil that is imported into China, but the larger volume of oil that China imports is from the Middle East. So with that in mind, China might not really want to do a lot of trade activity with the Russian Federation. Also, they might not want to completely sour themselves over with the current U.S. administration either, for trade purposes, and so they might not want to immediately start having all of that Russian oil flow in. And on top of that, the Chinese don't really have the kind of money that Europe had, just to put that out there. Some people don't get that, that the Chinese are actually the third largest economic entity in the world. It's actually the United States as number one with a GDP of around $28 trillion, and Europe comes in at as the second largest economic power with around a $23 trillion GDP, meaning that the whole of Europe is only about $5 trillion short in gross domestic product from the United States. China is all the way down at number 3 and is a significant amount below Europe. It's around 6 to 7 trillion below Europe at around an 18 to 17.5 trillion dollar GDP, meaning that the People's Republic of China, crazily enough, actually doesn't have as much money as Europe, and that means that they would not be able to even buy Russian gas at the cheap price it is currently. That once again is adding into the big issue. The Russians really don't have a lot of people to sell this stuff to. The Russian market, the entire Russian economy, is built around selling oil and gas to Europe. It's built around selling it at pretty decent prices. It's built around all of their logistics being sent into Europe, or really creating a connection to the European market. If they don't have that, they have nothing. And the Chinese couldn't even really fill in the gap that they're currently dealing with right now. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of other things that were involved in international trade that the Russian Federation would not be able to really witness that much, or at least benefit from. And once again, also another thing I got to throw out here, this is a bit of an important thing. Refining components for oil refineries are a little bit expensive, and also they got to be specially machined at specific kinds of plants and factories, almost custom made even still to this day. And so the Russians have to have most of those parts imported. A lot of Russian manufacturers just don't have the ability to produce those kinds of refining parts for a condenser, say. And so for this reason, if the Russians aren't able to get a lot of these components and parts from Europe or the United States, or even the Chinese for that matter, they're screwed. Every time Ukraine hits an oil refinery from this point forward, if the sanctions are truly that hard, they're not going to be able to repair the refineries anymore if they run out of parts. And they're probably going to be running out of parts very soon because they've been using up a lot of them already over the past year and a half. So they might be in for quite truly a day of judgment coming around sometime soon, because of the dog-headed actions they took today. But
honestly, man, I think the day of judgment might already be here, because y'all might recall we reported on it a couple of weeks back. It was Gazprom, or one of the major oil companies in Russia, had laid off a ton of people from their headquarters, which indicated they're having significant financial difficulty. And that was one bad sign. Today, they just laid off another 1,500 people from a separate office in Gazprom. So even though that for right now, it looks like it might be a little bit confusing, like we're really not sure exactly which way this is going to go, it's starting to become a lot more clear at this point that it looks like Russia has really stepped in the dog pile at this point. The Russian oil industry is still going down fast, even while this talk is happening. So I don't know where Putin's confidence is really coming from, because the economy in Russia is going downhill either way he looks. So I don't know what their objective is. Surely they're trying to come up with some way to supplement their economy so it doesn't collapse while they're keeping this war running. But I just don't see where they're going to do that, because unless China steps in, because I see China as basically the only saving grace for Russia at this point. Unless they step in, then the Russian economy is going to have a hell of a situation with these brand new sanctions, in my view.
Also, someone said these sanctions just increase the price for us to pay for more things. That would be true with like anyone else but Russia, because we don't buy shit from them. Like us, at least in the United States, we buy nothing from them. We could sanction them all day long. We could sanction everything coming out of Russia, and it wouldn't affect the U.S. economy one bit, because we don't buy anything from them in the first place. Europe buys only oil and gas from the Russians, but still, they can find other partners to become their suppliers elsewhere that wouldn't be that much more expensive in practice or reality. The United States has a a large amount of liquefied natural gas that could be shipped across the sea. That's a little bit more expensive, but not that much more expensive. And also the Middle East provides a large amount of oil and natural gas as well. And I believe there are some pipelines that travel from the Middle East into Europe. So if the Europeans need to poke a straw into something else rather than the Russians, it would be the Middle East, largely for the most part, just due to them actually having a land corridor that they can largely work with there. But no, the U.S. would not be affected by sanctions on the Russians. Their economy is itty-bitty, teeny-tiny. It's almost non-existent. And also, if you do not believe me on that, let me go pull up U.S.-Russia trade. Let's see. Oh, man. Wait, hang on. Let's see. Hang on, let me see if I can go get a year before, because our trade in 2024 with Russia only was equivalent to 3.5 billion, which in the trade world is literally nothing. But that was in 2024 with a decent amount of sanctions already in place. So we want to see what it looked like pre-war. So they actually do not have a pre-war number on the United States Trade Representative website. So let me see. Let me see here. Can we find any years? Let's see. Trade by year. Let's go see if we can get that instead. Maybe we can get something good here. So at the highest, it appears that trade with Russia, really from 2015 up until the beginning of the war in 2021, was somewhere around $14 to $30 billion. 30 billion being the highest, 14 being the lowest. Now, we once again want to remind everyone that that's going up against some big boys out there in the trade world, like Canada, which we trade, I believe, around, it was something like, well, actually, I believe they import alone something like $500 billion worth of goods every year. So the Russians don't even get close. The Russians don't register on the scale at all, anywhere on the scale of being a significant economic partner of the United States. So acting like the Russians, like we live and breathe and die by Russian goods, is a little bit goofy, because when was the last time y'all ever bought anything that was made in Russia? Never. Like I can only think of one thing that I own that was made in Russia, and it's a Makarov, and that's it. And that thing was made in 1992, back when the trade was non-existent. So, you know, I would have a feeling that most of y'all don't own anything that was ever made in Russia. I only own one thing, and it largely was just a Makarov. And hell, most people aren't going, yeah, you know, I need to buy like 50 new Makarovs every year. So there is no significant trade with the Russians. There's just no way. So
there's not much trade with us, but I must admit, I'm very glad to hear that the U.S. is putting these sanctions back on Russia. And once again, these are not the old sanctions. Like I see some people saying he's simply renewing the old era sanctions that were put on them by the previous administration. But no, these are actually, according to their words, stricter than the last administration. So if it actually turns out to be stricter, this is the fastest way to basically win the war on Ukraine's behalf, because on the battlefield, and we've said this for a long time, it's going to be very hard for Ukraine to have a total victory on the battlefield. In fact, it could be impossible. It probably is impossible to have a total victory. Of course, the Ukrainians are going to keep pushing the Russians back, but to totally get the Russians out with as big of a population as they have, which can create a meat grinder situation, that's going to be very hard to accomplish. So the way to victory, we've always said it, is through collapsing the Russian economy. That's also a bit risky, though, because if Putin decides he's getting backed into a corner and the entire Russian government is going to collapse, that could force him to do something crazy, like let's say perhaps with Belarus aggressing on NATO, perhaps. I'm not sure how likely that is, but that's something right now that Belarus is currently saying out of their own mouth. So the sanctions are the way forward. Like if we can cripple the oil industry, the gas industry in Russia by forcing Europe to stop buying it, then that will be a surefire thing. The Russian economy will collapse. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take.
now, once again, to show everyone, I want to remind everyone again, trade is a big thing in the world. Money is a very important thing. So let's look at this graph. This is the trade figures of 2024. So let's take a gander. The European Union is actually our biggest trade partner in terms of imports and exports combined, totaling nearly $1 trillion in goods traded per year. We have a trade deficit with pretty much everyone, but that's largely because we import a lot, because we like finer goods. We like nice things. What's wrong with that? But we also have a large amount of trade with I believe it's the, oh man, I forgot how the abbreviation is, but it's the Southeast Asian Economic Alliance, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And we have about $500 billion of trade with them collectively, and also a trade deficit similar to that of the EU. Then we have Canada, and also Mexico, which crazily enough are our two biggest trading partners in terms of what they import to the United States. Mexico is actually number one at 505.9 billion, although it says that the European Union imports more. But I've always heard that Mexico and Canada were number one and number two, and Europe was number three. But it appears that according to this chart, it's the other way around. China is number three. They're just not that important anymore. Well, they are important, but not really that important, because when you consider that we trade about $1 trillion in goods with Europe every year back and forth, and we only trade about $500 million now with China back and forth. China, as far as a trade partner, is only half of the value of the European Union. And then we have Japan right below that, and Germany, as well as South Korea. India is number 7, crazily enough, along with the UK, and so on and so on. Taiwan's actually a pretty big trading partner as well. But let's go all the way down. Dude, Rolexes must account for the entire, like, trade volume with Switzerland. Like, I'm very sure of that. Lender's Chocolate, Rolex, and that's it. like it's got that's
Toblerone. Toblerone's probably a big
Toblerone too. But moving all the way down the list, here's the Russians. I don't know why they're at number 23, because the imports and exports to Russia only are equivalent to 3.5 billion, which doesn't really make a lot of sense that they're somehow above countries that we have $45 billion worth of collective trade with. So as far as the Russians, they're not even on the graph. They're not even supposed to be on the graph, because the smallest trading partner we have on the graph is number 30, with the Philippines at $23.5 billion of collective trade, and the Russians are only about a tenth of that. And that's the lowest one on the chart. So with all that in mind, I think it's a little bit obvious to many people that the Russians are economically insignificant, so sanctioning them means nothing, at least to the United States. To others, it might mean a little bit of something, but nobody really trades with the Russians because they don't really have a lot to sell. They only sell oil and gas and maybe some food products, but that's about it. That's all they have. So, you know, unless if you're just dying to just drink gas, like, there's really no business to have with them, really. But anyways, with that, I hope we were able to address the whole economic side of things the best we can. It's a very important part of how the world works, or really how countries exist and flourish these days. But before we move on into the rest of the news for the night, because there was a lot of it, we haven't even gotten to the part where Belarus threatened war with the West, which was kind of a thing. We have to make sure to get to some questions, because we've had a lot of questions. And not only that, crazily enough, we've had 10,100 people here tonight at the peak, and there's about 9.8 thousand people still here right now. And we hope that y'all are enjoying the news. It's been a wild night, to be sure, and I think a lot of people are getting an idea that the war is going to keep going, and you will see that a lot of the people, I'm going to be honest with y'all here. Here's my analysis on a lot of the people who said that they want the dying to stop. They're about to clearly become pro-Russians, and they're about to say, well, why didn't we accept the ceasefire? Russia should clearly win. They're so much better than everyone else. And then they're going to be labeled traitors to the state, like they probably should be. But beyond that whole deal, we do have many questions, and I want to make sure that we get to some of them before we keep moving on, so that way we can make sure to have a little bit of a breather here, so that I can get my thoughts put together to get through the remainder of all of the news that we have tonight, which there's still a lot of. So, Matthew, what is our first question of this segment?
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to K-Dub Janky, who's a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, K-Dub, for supporting the channel once again and helping to keep it running. And they put in a $50 donation. Thank you very much for that big support, by the way. They said, throwing a support from California city of Morgan Hill, and can we get a tour on your map? And thanks for the excellent coverage. And you guys are an American asset.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, K-Dub Janky. And we will go check out Morgan Hill, California. Where is Morgan Hill? It is, Matthew, I think we actually passed through here on the train, I think.
Maybe. It looks familiar.
I think we did. Is there a train station through this city? You know, Matthew, that is going, like, right through the place. I swear, dude, that's half, because we stopped in San Jose, not that far from there. Let me see. You know, we may have actually passed through your town, K-Dub Janky, in the middle of the night. So let me go see where the next train station is on this line. Dude, I swear that we had to, man, because I remember it was like, there was nothing out there. There was like no lights or farm fields or anything. So we're sure to run into a train station here in San Jose, and then I'd be like, oh, that's it. That was the place. Let's see here. I'm assuming, let's see. Okay, so I lost track of the rails. So I'm assuming that we actually went through Morgan Hill at some point, which is a little while. We actually passed through your place at one point, K-Dub Jinky, and it wasn't that long ago. But This is Morgan Hill. Just to give you all some brief looks at the pictures. Really nice looking, actually. It almost looks like Hawaii, in my opinion. It's really beautiful. But let's take a look down in downtown, which appears to be somewhere around here. And let's take a gander at this and take a look. Wow, this is actually really nice.
That is nice, actually. That's actually very clean looking.
Man, very nice indeed. Take a gander at this. Man, I gotta say, this is actually a pretty nice town. And I like how the roads are, like, well paved. I don't know what it is about California roads, but they generally do look well paved. I mean, there is some patchwork, but the patchwork isn't bad or incredibly rough. So pretty impressive stuff. And there's the train tracks right there. I swear, dude, that we had to have gone through Morgan Hill. Let me go check.
We probably did at some point. I just don't remember it because it was so late. And also at this point, I think I was like completely finished.
No, you weren't finished yet. Like, you were finished after we passed, like, Sacramento, I think. But let's see here. It was the, it was the Coast Starlight route. Let me go see if I can get the route and see where we went. Because I'm dying to know at this point. So, you know, it looks like we would have gone through there, at some point. It didn't stop there, but it looks like it clearly did go through. It sure as hell did. Would you look at that, Matthew? That is the train line right there going into San Jose, and that is dead on in the middle of Morgan Hill. So we passed right through your town, K-Dub about 6 months ago or so at this point. Really cool to think, actually. We weren't that far from you for at least a couple of minutes as the train was passing through. But a really nice town. Let's drop down somewhere else and take another look at Morgan Hill, like right through here. Oh, dang, look at this building. What is this?
Oh, it's like some type of auditorium or something. That must be a school.
Maybe. It's a really nice school, though. We don't have schools like that in Alabama. We usually go to school in huts. But what a really nice town. I really like it, K-Dub Jenky. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And really cool to think we passed by you in Morgan Hill on the Coast Starlight from Amtrak. Very, very nice train. I really liked it. Matthew will say it's a terrible train. Matthew will say that it was a terrible train. I really liked the train. We are going to be cutting all the funding to the trains. There will be no more trains, only suffering. Like, no benefits. No benefits at all. Walk or something, or get a car. I don't know. But anyways, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And once again, we do want to be a little bit of modest, I guess you could say modesto about it, but still, thank you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. Also, thank you for the kind words as well.
Yes, indeed. And moving on to our next super chat here, this one goes to Autocross 101, who puts in another very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Autocross, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. We do appreciate it. Autocross said, thanks for the hard work every night, and I've been watching since the beginning of the war.
And I gotta thank you, Autocross 101, for enjoying our news every single night. We try our best to make sure that our analysis is good, our news coverage is tops, and I hope that we've been able to do that for thousands, hundreds of days at this point, over 1,000 days now. And it's really crazy to think that we've been at this for so long, and we've really just kind of grown up doing this at the same time. But it is an absolute honor, Autocross, to know that folks like you have been around and enjoying this channel massively. And not only that, you're going out of your way to support it and help it to keep on rolling. Nobody has to do that. Nobody has to support the channel at all. It's something that you could just sit back and watch this show forever and not throw in a single cent, and we don't ever think that any of y'all really owe the channel a single dime. Really, it's enough for us to ask for y'all's time. But the folks who do support the channel, like you, Autocross, are helping us to be able to pay our bills and actually do this as our full-time job. And we are incredibly thankful and greatly appreciative for folks like you, because in reality, while a lot of people say that our work is really good, we would never be able to work at all if we weren't able to actually do this as our living. And folks like you make that entirely possible, so that way we can be here every single night, every single day of every week, except for Monday, doing this nightly. It's folks like you who really made this thing possible, and I gotta thank you so much for the support and the kind words, because really a lot of folks ought to be thanking you rather than us for making it possible for us to even be on here and covering the news for so many people. There's already been 40,000 people here so far on the stream, and there's still 9.1 thousand people here. And it is just amazing to think that folks like you are supporting a news channel that is talking to so many people. It's really crazy when I think about it because we never really think about it much anymore. But back in the day, I would be wildly scared of a crowd of 9,000 people, which is a lot. Like when you think about that, that is huge. Most political rallies that you hear of in, say, a campaign season in the United States for the last two candidates, which were, y'all know who they are, fill in the blanks. They would bring in thousands of people, but most of them would bring in a crowd about this size. And so we talk to a political rally size crowd every single night that's just here at any given moment, and we just do it. Like, it used to be incredibly stressful. Nowadays, it isn't that much. Still a little stressful, I'm not going to lie. Like, I get a little hyped up before each stream. But I do thank you so much for the support because you are helping that massive crowd to be able to have a channel to come to each night to be able to hear the news from. And I also got to thank everyone for the kind words in the chat. I've been seeing them come in as I've been addressing Autocross the Super Chat, and I got to thank you all so much for enjoying this channel and really giving some kind words to it as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And of course, there's no way that we can appease anyone these days because, I want to say this, like, I get a kick out of this every night. Last night, just to put this out there for everyone, we were snowflake liberals because we said that the president's foreign policy prerogatives weren't really that good. Now tonight we're saying, oh, look, he's like actually like screwing down the Russians. He's actually doing something good. So now tonight we are once again back to being MAGA Republicans, like according to people in the chat. Like, it's actually crazy how people can like flip that on a dime and not see that we're just assessing things as good or bad, and we have clear objectives of what's good and what's not. And if someone's meeting the standard of what we think is good, it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. Like, I guess people just cannot see that. Sometimes, well, some people can. So we are either their friend or their enemy, depending on whether we say an action is good or not. I'm not saying that in like bewilderment or like, don't beat me up. Like, it's honestly just funny to see that it changes nightly, and people just don't get we're neutral. Like of course an action is going to be good or bad in the end, but I'm not going to show any bias or favor towards one group or the other. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news.
All right, so this one is going to go to James Hughes, who puts in a 50 as well. And thank you very much, James Hughes, for also being another longtime channel legend, and we appreciate that support very much. It's that support that keeps the channel running, kind of like PBS, they say. But James said, from my point of view, Russia will need to be forced to the negotiating table. Putin has no cards except the nuke card. And will the USA send non-combative advisors to Ukraine? No U.S. advisors, no beating the Russians' butts out of Ukraine. And thoughts. Honestly, James, I'll tell you this. I think the negotiating table has just been busted as of today. I think it is over. Of course, things have the possibility of flip-flopping. I won't rule it out. But based on what I saw today and what Putin was saying, it sounds like the U.S. and Russia are back to status quo before the current president took office. So I think it might be a done deal. I don't think there's any forcing them to any table at this point. Russia just made their bed, and they're about to lay in it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I think that bed's going to be very uncomfortable, Matthew, because it's made up of shrapnel and explosives. Like, it's going to be a very bad one. In my opinion, James Hughes, I think that the negotiating side of things, like Matthew said, it's most likely going to be over. Because one thing that hasn't really set in yet is how much of an idiot Putin has made the president look like. And not speaking as someone political, but speaking as a citizen of the United States, I find it a little bit, I don't find it a little bit, I actually find it very insulting what countries have done to the prior president and this president to try and make them look like fools. It represents the United States poorly, and it's a deliberate action by them, not only to disrespect the office of the president, but to disrespect the United States at large and their opinion of them, or their opinion of us, more so, speaking as an American myself. And with that in mind, I would say that we're probably going to see that the President of the United States, considering that he does have quite a decent amount of ego, is going to take that quite personally or quite offensively, and he's going to start acting on that sort of a level. Now,
yeah, he basically got called a liar. That's basically the reality of it is, if you look at it from a sort of like a self-consumed kind of like I hate to use charged language like this, but kind of like a narcissistic view, which is honestly, I'm just saying this neutrally, folks. I'm just observing the guy's personality. He thinks very highly of himself. So with Putin coming out and doing this and basically making him look like a liar, and I'll leave it up to you as to whether or not you think he lied or not. That is not going to bode well for the U.S. president, because that is his whole image is looking like he has the upper hand. So now it looks like he just got pooped on by a guy who is supposedly his friend, or at least he made it seem like he was his friend. And that's some bad embarrassment right there. So I think the retribution is going to be strong toward Putin for that blunder that he made.
And I would have to say, I think that it probably would be the case that this is not going to end up well, man. Like, he was sitting there, man. He was thinking, all right, they're going to go out there to Russia and Putin is going to follow through and he's going to say, I don't want any more war. Let's stop the war and let's get to talking. It's going to be great. We're going to talk about so many things. Wait a minute, what? He said that he doesn't want to accept a ceasefire? Oh, shit. Like, he was probably doing that today behind closed doors, man. In the White House, he's like, okay, now I look like an idiot. He got me pretty good, but now I'm going to get him pretty good.
I think he knew days ago. I think that's why he set this up the way he did, because I think he knew probably days ago that the behind-the-scenes talks were getting really sideways with Russia, and he basically allowed Zelenskyy to walk Putin into a trap, which Zelenskyy did very smartly. And now the U.S. has no choice but to start arming Ukraine once again, or otherwise we look like fools.
Man, I honestly think it's probably exactly how it's going to work. It's exactly how it's going to happen. And so we are going to see that the diplomatic negotiating phase of things is going to be off. With how the president of the United States works, just to explain him a bit as a person from what I've seen so far, this was Russia's only chance, and the next chance they're going to get, they're going to have to create it. He's not going to go out of his way to create another chance for them. He's probably going to push this to the very brink of a third world war, and then at that point, the Russians are going to have to choose whether they want to get curb stomped and then go into nuclear Armageddon, or if they want to reach out to the United States and Ukraine and see about ending the conflict then and there. I think that's really what's going to be happening at this point, because once again, working off of a similar mindset to what happened to Ukraine had the one chance. Honestly, what happened today in a more polite form is the same kind of ambush that happened on Zelenskyy, but it wasn't done in the Oval Office or in person. It was more so done through a delegation team, because it's quite clear that the Russians were never going to accept a ceasefire. So the delegation went over there, and in a sense, might as well represented the president. Putin spits in their face. Very insulting, not that great. And so now they're coming back, and they're going to tell the president that. And then the president's going to shut off the Russians and treat them like garbage, kind of like how he treated the Ukrainians like garbage for a bit, because Zelenskyy got ambushed by design in the Oval Office. So I think that that's probably what's going to be happening here. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, to be entirely honest with you, James Hughes, I think that we're probably going to be ramping up support in ways that is going to be pretty damn escalatory. Like, considering that the current president of the United States likes to try and portray himself on a foreign policy level as a madman, and some of his actions are quite honestly mad, I think that he's going to probably be doing things that we would have never expected under the prior administration, and to be entirely honest, might be a little bit too escalatory, or might be pushing too many buttons, because while I'm all for putting our adversaries in a corner, we have to do it with a little bit of finesse, a little bit of grace, in a sense, so that way we don't push them too far and freak them out. And he might actually push it a little too far possibly in the future, because now he's been deeply, grievously wounded from the insult that was given today, pretty much, by saying,
Yeah.
Ceasefire is great, but I have to win before I even cede to ending the war.
Yeah, honestly, what are the odds of that happening? Like, at this point, I don't know, because we got two very unpredictable people here. Putin is predictable to an extent, but the U.S. president is very unpredictable when it comes to what he's going to do, because it seems like the plan is kind of like play it by ear sort of mentality. So I wonder if this is going to basically boomerang back the other direction, where now not only are we arming Ukraine, but now we're going overboard, like potentially pushing Russia toward the brink, because we've gone basically a full 360 and we've done a boomerang effect. and now it's extreme on another direction. I wonder if it's going to get to that point. And also, I wonder if we're going to see a really strong language that was used towards Zelenskyy being used on Putin coming up in the next couple of days, because I've not really heard a response from the U.S. president on Putin's current actions. It's been kind of mum for right now. So I wonder if today or tomorrow we'll be seeing some type of strongly worded statement, which basically puts the president at odds in public with Putin for once.
Dude, I know what's going to happen. Putin is a sick person, one of the sickest. I've never seen anyone as sick as him. He went to Angela Merkel, gave her a dog. He knew she was scared of dogs, scared the shit out of her. A terrible guy, horrendous guy. We're going to bomb the hell out of him. Like, it's going to be something like that, probably.
If that happens, I don't think there's any there's no hope of that relationship being salvaged in any way between Putin and the U.S. president if that starts happening, because it was salvaged between Zelenskyy and the U.S. because Zelenskyy needs the U.S. for support. So Zelenskyy had a reason to come back. There's no reason at all for Putin to come back if he's committing to this war and he's willing to take the Russian economy to the brink. There's no reason for Putin to come back. Like, I think once it's ruined in that relationship, it's not recoverable.
I got to be honest with you, though, thinking about it on a domestic end, not speaking about it on a domestic political end, but a domestic mindset end, I don't know how a lot of people are going to be taking this change. It's coming. Like, I can promise y'all that this is coming at this point. I don't know how a lot of people are going to be taking it, because I'll be honest with y'all, there are a lot of people out there who really like Russia more so than they have any loyalty to the United States, that are guising themselves largely under the concept that the president has pushed forward, that we want the war in Ukraine to end because we like peace and we don't want people dying. But in the reality, those people are pretty much just Russian supporters, and they really want the Russians to win. So I don't know how they're going to be taking it, because there's going to be a pretty decent shift. Mark my words, folks. And they're going to be sitting there and going, what the hell? The Russians are the good ones. They need to win, or something like that. And I don't know how they're going to be taking it at all.
Yeah, I don't either. It's just the whiplash, like Kendrick was saying in the live chat, the whiplash is insane. Like, one day you think no way we're about to give up Ukraine to the Russians. Like, we're about to force them to capitulate and everybody's in a panic. The next day, Ukraine's getting all the weapons they need. All of a sudden, the mineral deal is not a problem anymore. It's like that totally disappeared and went away. And now sanctions are being put on Putin once again. And we haven't heard anything publicly from the U.S. president about it, at least when it comes to talking about Putin. And who knows what tomorrow's going to bring. Like, it's probably going to be insane. If this starts popping off publicly really bad between Putin and Trump, it's going to be an interesting situation, because I don't know where that's going to go, because those two going at it could be a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Dude, Zelenskyy sitting there, he's like, I've been saying this the whole freaking time. This is what I've been going up against. And then tomorrow, man, you're probably going to hear something like this. I've been thinking about this rare earths deal that we have with Ukraine, and they're not bad people, pretty good people. And I was trying to see if we could reverse the mineral agreement to where instead of Ukraine giving us minerals, we gave them minerals and rare metals. And I have one that I personally like to give them. I call it aluminum.
Oh my goodness! Now let's take it a step further. The Ukrainians have the F-16. They got that. I wonder if it would ever get to the point of this, because in the past we said it's probably not a good idea to give Ukraine this kind of stuff, because it might get in the hands of the Russians and it would be a huge OPSEC issue. But I wonder if the current guy in the U.S. would get crazy enough to give them an F-35 or something crazy like that in Ukraine. Like, I think it's unlikely, but if the guy decides to go bonkers on Putin or something, which it's a possibility, then I wonder if we'd give something crazy over like an F-35.
I wonder, honestly, because I'll be honest with y'all, with the current guy, he doesn't really get much things like, you can take that as an insult or a compliment. Like, he's not really from the system, so you might not get national security interest that much. So you might just be like, what the hell, I'll give him an F-35, see what happens, and it's like, honestly, I would be scared of that, because it's like, what if it did get shot down? It's like, that's going to be a pretty big risk that we're running there. But at the same time, though, think about it. What could they do with an F-35?
I say hold off on that. The only times I'd be for F-35 showing up in Ukraine is if we're fighting Russia directly, as the West against Russia. But before that, I would say don't risk it. That's way too big of a risk. Like, I'm all for Ukraine, but we can't go too overboard. And I would say giving them something modern like that would be a mistake, because if the Russians get their hands on it, they're going to send it right over to China. And while China probably has some like vague plans with the F-35 to build a copy it, they don't have a real working model in their hands, and we don't need to give them that.
I would agree absolutely on that. I don't think that giving Ukraine the top tech is the best idea ever for national security reasons. But still, that would be an interesting thing to think about, man. But at the same time, though, I would have to say if World War III broke out, then we could really give the best of our stuff to Ukraine because at that point, we're pretty much united in the fight against the Russians. So it's like if an American F-35 got shot down or a Ukrainian one got shot down, so it doesn't really make much of a difference because they're being used against them anyways, so might as well equip our allies at that point in that conflict with the best technology that we can provide. But still, interesting idea. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that question well, James Hughes. Huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you and KW Janky and Autocross 101 and everyone else who supported the channel tonight that helps this thing to be possible and helps us to keep this thing running day in and day out. And I see some people, I gotta say this, I see some people saying some things in the chat. It seems kind of like, I'll be honest, it always comes off kind of like politically whenever people say something like the president's bought and sold to the Russians, or like with the last president, the Chinese own them. Like that was a pretty common one. Like, just give it time. Just give it time. Y'all might be right, or might be wrong, who knows. But I have a feeling right now, no matter what, even if he was bought and sold by the Russians, this kind of an insult that happened today cannot go unanswered. But that's largely my assessment at this point. But we'll see. Like, there's no reason in getting heated about it here. We're all just chit-chatting. But we'll see.
Hopefully we don't eat our words tomorrow, because if there's a sudden whiplash again tomorrow where it's like, okay, like Russia and Ukraine have come to a ceasefire deal because Ukraine's going to have to be forced to give up some land, I'm going to be pulling my hair out. Because it seems pretty certain at this point that it looks like Russia is on a bad path when it comes to U.S. relations, but you never know. Like, hopefully tomorrow we're not just totally eating our foot and mouth.
Man, honestly, that's how it felt for a couple of weeks here. It was like, oh, well, we just said all this stuff and it looks like we're wrong. And then it turned out that it seems like the Russians did exactly what we said. So if our original analysis was correct, which it's been correct crazily enough at this point now, it's just that there was like a million gymnastics that had to be done to get to the point we said would happen. If our analysis was correct, the United States response should be predictable at this point. Don't know if it will be or not, because once again, like Matthew's saying, it's really hard to predict at this point, anything. And like Ken Larson says, it's possible. Like, anything's possible at this point. So we could be proven wrong tomorrow. And then we hear, okay, the Ukrainians are giving up everything east of the Dnipro River and it's all over. It's like that. We could be hearing that. Who knows? But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news. And I want to make sure that we get on into the next spicy topic that was in the title, because we were able to hear that the Belarusians are back to threatening war. Russia and Belarus are ready to take military and diplomatic measures in response to NATO actions. That was a Russian-Belarusian joint statement made today during that press conference that I showed you all a snippet of that occurred in Minsk. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so 47% of the audience said Belarus will never attack NATO, while 37% said Belarus will be used as a Russian weapon, basically a pawn for Putin, and 13% said it depends on how desperate Putin gets. And so far, now that there's a new agreement in place between Russia and Belarus that basically requires Belarus to fight on Russia's behalf if they feel like they're getting attacked, then it sounds like Belarus has gotten themselves into a bad fix with that entire agreement if Putin decides to use them as a pawn. So I'm going to say this. I'm actually with the 37%. I think Belarus is going to be used as a Russian weapon. Lukashenko may not want to do something to the West, but he might be forced to, or at least allow Belarus to be used as a staging point for Russian troops if they decide to launch an attack on NATO. I think that is a very strong possibility, and the security agreement that's been signed basically requires Belarus to go along with that plan. I think that was Putin's idea all along. So I'm with the minority on this one. But Enforcer, what say you?
People have said, Belarus this, Belarus that. I have to be honest with y'all, I'd like to call it Belarus because it is weaker than Russia and a bigger wimp. We are going to knock the hell out of them if they do anything. We're going to really do them really badly. People are not going to see anything like it. It's going to be the worst beating in history. It's going to be worse than the beating that was given to Nazi Germany or Adolf Hitler when he was a little boy. His dad beat him really badly and should have beaten him harder. But beyond that, I will say that Belarus will most likely be used as a Russian weapon in the future. They already are a part of Russia, pretty much exclusively. They have some fat guy that looks like Mr. Potato Man. Mr. Potato Man is what we call him. That's what we call him, folks. Absolutely right there. 100% Mr. Potato Man. And he listens directly to Putin. He wants to be a colonel in the Russian army. Very sad, very sad. I could do better than that. I could probably be a brigadier general, but nevertheless, he's going to be used as a weapon, and we are going to beat the hell out of him. But with that, I hope that does address that well in a presidential tone. And we are going to be moving on from that and into Poland, because we were able to hear, moving on from the jokes, that Poland is now requesting nuclear weapons deployments from the United States inside of their territory to deter the Russian Federation from conducting any aggression on Polish soil, which is a pretty strong measure. We are largely seeing that the Polish have an obsession with creating some sort of a nuclear umbrella over their country at this point, either by producing their own nuclear weapons and fielding them, or getting the United States to provide their nuclear weapons. But the Polish are absolutely racing at this point to try and get some form of nuclear protection for their country. We have also been able to hear, meanwhile, that might not just be against the Russians, it might be against the Germans, because a famous company from times of old appears to be doing something that they did before they invaded Poland, which is called Volkswagen, also called the people's car. That's what Volkswagen means in German, and we were able to see that they're back to making tanks. Everyone knows this meme.
Volkswagen making tanks, yeah.
Now, everyone knows that Volkswagen's emissions ratings have been fudged a little bit, but one thing that was really fudged up was when a whole bunch of Volkswagen-made tanks rolled across the border of Poland in 1939 and took over their country, and then started World War II in Europe. But beyond that, Volkswagen is considering the beginning of using its factories for the production of military vehicles as Germany begins rearmament. And the automaker has spare capacity, as sales have plummeted in recent years, but also they just have spare capacity, for reasons. But beyond that, they have spare capacity and they are willing to use it for the purposes of German rearmament. So we will probably be seeing that there will be a lot of military vehicles out there with the Volkswagen badge on them. And there was a very cool vehicle that was actually made back in the day. I'm not going to lie, I actually thought this one was pretty neat. It's the Volkswagen Kübelwagen. This was made by Volkswagen in World War II. They actually have a pretty decent history of making military vehicles. This one's pretty neat because it's like the German Jeep, made in far less numbers, mind you. It was nowhere close to being mass-produced like the Jeep, but it was pretty much the German equivalent of the Jeep, and I find it to be pretty neat because it has those ribbed sides to it, and that just kind of looked cool.
That's pretty neat. Surely enough, they could make a militarized version of the Volkswagen Jetta. That could be a good one. That could be nice. Like add some armored sides to it and stuff. Put that little nice 4-cylinder turbo in there. It should be a pretty good military vehicle.
You know what? I'm wondering. Military vehicles made by Volkswagen. Let's go see if they've made any recently, because I wouldn't personally know. Well, it appears that their time of making military vehicles ended in World War II, from what I can find. So, oh, wait a minute, no. Oh, wait a minute, I'm totally wrong. The Iltis is a Volkswagen design.
Interesting. Can you imagine if we have like all the German manufacturers on our side this time, like during a World War situation? Like we could have Mercedes coming in, we could have Porsche coming back in. I mean, they designed some pretty decent tanks. Like I'm not gonna lie, like when it comes to design, like a Porsche tank, I wouldn't mind that. A nice Mercedes tank, wouldn't mind that either. Some military transport vehicles or something, that would actually be pretty decent. We'd have them supplying us this time.
Yeah, like an American general walks into like a Volkswagen factory and you hear the and then he goes in there, what the hell is that? It's a valve gun. How did you make it? Val, we just kind of put the heads to it, like it just happened. You want it? Yeah, and it's like honestly, with the Germans on our side, anything's possible this time around. Like we could probably have some pretty wild stuff with America. Like honestly, we got like the all-star team as far as like weapons production goes. We have the British, who created the jet engine. We have the Germans, who created modern rocketry. We have the French, who are just pretty cool. We have the Polish, who have a lot of morale. And then we have the United States, that comes in with general reliability and efficiency in mass production. And all combined, we should be able to do something pretty impressive here, I think. Like, we should be able to do something wild.
And also, Mercedes can simply take their existing G-Wagon lineup that they currently already make for the consumer market and then start militarizing them again. Because once again, there's already militaries around the world that use the G-Series Mercedes as a military vehicle. So that's something Mercedes is already doing. So they can simply ramp up that production that's already existing, and you can use G-Wagons. Oh, you'd have people sign up for the military all day long trying to drive one.
man, you're gonna be hearing out in the distance. I got 7 Mac 11s, about 8 38s, 9 9s, 10 Mac 10s. The shit's never. As they're like driving up to the front line, the Russians gonna be like, "What the hell is this?" And then they just see G-Wagons like rolling over like cavalry. Yeah. Man, that would be scary.
Bring in the 6x6 too. We want them all.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. Like I'm not hyped for war, but I mean, when we think about these kinds of mental images here, it's hard to say that we would have a hard time fighting the Russians. To be entirely honest with y'all, we would win by the drip factor alone. But moving on from that and out of Germany and Europe for a second, we were able to hear that the United States is considering a wide variety of options to retake the Panama Canal. The White House has directed the U.S. Army to draw up options for increasing the American military presence in Panama, and U.S. Southern Command, which is in charge of this right now, is developing plans to vary from partnering more closely with the Panamanian forces to the less likely option of U.S. troops seizing the Panama Canal by military force. Meaning that the United States is still seriously considering the retaking of the Panama Canal through really any means. Moving on from that, and into the Middle East for a brief moment, we were able to hear that Israel did strike Damascus today. Their target was the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, also called the PIJ, or the PB&J, depending on where you're from. And the Israeli government has made it incredibly clear that they will continue these airstrikes until the terrorist groups stop forming, which means that these will never end. And we can also see the strike right here from an Israeli targeting pod. Well, that's the end of the clip right there, and moving on from that, and on into our next clip, as a matter of fact, over in North Korea, we were able to hear that the President of the United States reinstated that we have a fantastic relationship with Kim Jong-un. This comes in the middle of him threatening to nuke everyone.
Oh, man, what a toxic relationship. If that's a good relationship, then, you know, that says something.
I have a great relationship with Kim Jong-un. It's about as great as the one I have with the crackhead outside of my hotel. Very bad. Like it's very bad. He sometimes goes into outbursts of violence, but sometimes I offer him a nice taco from the cafe downstairs. Sometimes he accepts it. Sometimes he throws it back at me, but we kind of like him a little bit. He's got a little bit of character, but generally we ignore him. So I don't know what's up with that. I have no clue, but you know, it was just funny. I thought we would point it out. Moving on from that and down to Guangzhou in the Eastern Theater Command inside of China, we were able to see that the People's Liberation Army is continuing to construct special barges. Take a gander at these.
Yes. That looks like trouble on the horizon.
It looks like they're getting ready to invade Taiwan sometime in the future.
What the hell are all these rinky-dink things back here? What are they going to do? Launch a like medieval-style invasion?
Well, if it breaks down, they tow it away with those. It's
oh, for real?
No, I'm like, no, not at all.
I mean, I wasn't going to put it past them. I was going to believe it.
Well, you can see a picture of it here, and we can also see another picture of the larger system. But what these are barges that are able to float across the Strait of Taiwan under their own power. And once they make it to the shoreline, they should be able to set up these large pillars below them, pretty much planting themselves into the bottom of the sea floor near to the beach, and in between them all, they're able to lay out gantries connecting them all to each other, and they're able to make it to where amphibious support ships are able to pull right up to pretty much what they have created, which is a ad hoc pier, and they're able to unload loads of infantry fighting vehicles and main battle tanks immediately once these are able to be created and exist quite significantly, meaning that a ground invasion of Taiwan would have a significant larger amount of infantry fighting vehicles and armor support to work with pretty much from the onset of the amphibious landing, most likely within the first few days. So it looks as though the People's Liberation Army is still working on trying to get the invasion of Taiwan ready for 2027 at the earliest, and most likely 2029 to 2030 at the latest. But a lot of people have been wondering, well, really talking at this point about the U.S.-Russian relations as we now move on into the frontline news here in a moment. And do you foresee any circumstances where the U.S.-Russia relationship will salvage peace talks at this point? And it seems as though some people are saying, it could flip at any moment. Some people are saying, no, relations are officially ruined. Others are saying that the Russians and the U.S. will stay on good terms, and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So a whopping 48% said it can really flip at any moment. I really cannot say, to be honest with you. While 33% said relations are officially ruined as of this point, and 12% said yes, Russia and the U.S. will stay on good terms. And on this one, I'll be honest with you, it's a bit of a crapshoot on this one. But I'm going to go out on a limb and be with the 34%. I think the relations are officially ruined. It may not go, to level 100 immediately, but I think the wheels are in motion at this point. That the relationship is completely over between the U.S. and Russia. That's a big statement to make and a big gamble for me to say that because, of course, we have the flip-flopper who's currently in charge right now. Now, I'm saying that, neutrally as possible. He does flip-flop a lot. It's just a factual statement. So it could flip at any moment, but I'm going to say I'm with the 34%. But Enforcer, what say you?
Matthew, I just realized why we got the analysis right with what happened today. We weren't analyzing it from what the president of the United States was going to do. We analyzed it from what the Russians were going to do. And they were fairly predictable. That's why we got it right. But I don't know what the president of the United States is going to do, to be entirely honest with you all. I'm also going to go out on a limb, largely so that way if Matthew is wrong, we're both wrong at the same time, and say that the relationship is, like we'll both be wrong, but the relations are probably officially ruined at this point. I'll be honest with y'all, it's probably going to look just bipolar for the next few days. Like the president will be saying, Putin's a great guy, and then the next day after that, Putin's a piece of shit, and then it'll be back to, Putin's pretty decent, and then finally it'll just stabilize it. Putin is a bastard, and we're giving the Ukrainians more bombs, and then that'll probably be the end of it, because we're already giving them more military equipment right now today. Even after the diplomatic conference in Moscow ended, we're still giving them more arms and bombs. So clearly it's got to be showing that we aren't looking at really accepting what Russia is saying at face value, because they're saying that the Ukrainians cannot rearm at all if we're agreeing to a ceasefire, which means that if we agreed to that, we would have stopped the arms support probably again today, and we didn't. So I don't really think that there is going to be that much of a flip-flopping. There'll probably be a little bit, but it'll probably end up leveling out of the Russians are terrible people, and we have to support the Ukrainians because there's no other choice. That probably will be the case.
I wonder if we're going to see a quote-unquote appetite for a new Ukraine aid package all of a sudden. Like, I wonder if some politicians are going to get hungry for Ukraine on their behalf and start thinking about maybe including that as something they might want to pass. Because before I'd heard that they had just seen some roadkill or something. They lost their appetite when it comes to looking at Ukraine. Ukraine looked like roadkill on the side of the road, but I think they might have found their appetite all of a sudden, depending on how this goes in the next couple of days.
Meanwhile, in a U.S. senator's office, listen, I know that I said really bad things about Zelenskyy, but we need to give him more money. like it's about to happen, man, honestly. Like,
it could. You never know.
Dude, he's probably going to be out there. He's going to, what did I never said that. Like, probably, because at this point, I think it's fairly clear this is not going to be going the way a lot of people thought it was going to go. It looks like it's actually going to go the way we originally thought it was going to go. But once again, we can be wrong. And, we've been humbled a lot over the past few weeks with how it ended up getting to this point. So just being honest with you all, we could be wrong. So, don't take what we're saying at face value. If you want to disagree, we're always fine with that, but we're totally fine with that certainly tonight, because we might be wrong by tomorrow. Who knows? But moving on from that, and on into the rest of our news, finally making it back into Ukraine, we were able to see that the city of Saratov was attacked quite significantly, as the Saratov refinery appears to have been, actually it was a pumping station, I forgot, whoopsies, a little pumping station in Saratov got attacked right here. Dude, this has happened so much. This guy actually plugged his ears before it actually blew up. Like, he didn't watch it. Like, oh, look at him. He's like, oh, here it comes again. He covers his ears.
You know what? It's also sad, too. Aren't they supposed to have ear pros or something? They're working in like a loud environment. Dude's plugging his ears with his hands.
Nah, man, you just get used to the noise. Like they used to say back in the industrial day. You just pretty much go deaf.
Get that tinnitus.
What? I can't hear you over the sound of that ringing. Like, that's ridiculous.
Охуеть, нахуй!
Охуеть!
Давайте все возьмите!
Well, that's the end of that clip. But meanwhile, we also got to hear the air raid sirens going off in Ingalls as well.
They're getting down in Inglestown.
Frederick Ingalls, is that you? I've come back to try and bring communism. It's like, wow, look, it's that guy. But anyways, moving on from the Ingalls and out of that whole area and out of that business, whatever that was. It's time for us to get into our location unknowns. And we were able to see some helicopters in action. What a picture. A really nice one. I liked it. Moving on from that was just a picture. It's time for us to go look at the Russian casualty report. Take a gander at this. Oh, no Bobcats.
They stopped even on 777. No more Bobcats today. Tell us more.
Man, Miss DC, keeper of the records, did say that troops closed to a 7-day average of 1,207. Other categories are below averages. However, drones and vehicles are still robust, and robust they are indeed. Now let's talk about the bust that the Russians had today. 1,200 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 2 armored personnel carriers, 81 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 19 artillery pieces, 71 drones, and nothing else. It was a pretty decent day, not the biggest day that we've seen, but still not bad. Moving on from that, and on into the front lines themselves, we were able to see that up in Vilshana, the Ukrainians were laying down heat with the Chad music playing in the background. Well, you see this guy has whipped out the compass to figure out the exact direction in which the heat will be laid out. And we now see them setting up their position to lay out heat.
That's a nice position, by the way. That's nice.
Oh, and it looks like heat's about to be laid, and heat's getting laid out.
What's that guy doing at the bottom?
What do you mean? What do you
What
mean?
was he doing down there?
He's holding the tripod so that way it doesn't go out of control.
Interesting.
Oh man, did you think it was
I was about to do that. I was
me?
holding back. I was holding back. Oh man. I'm not even gonna say it.
It wasn't me, I swear. This guy's actually doing something. I don't. We are not the same. But moving on from that and out of that clip, it is time for us to move on into our next one in the area, where we also get to see the Ukrainian border guards hitting even more Russians in the area. It was a little snowy today, but it was certainly not a snow day for the Russians. It looks like they were busy getting hit pretty badly by the Ukrainians.
Somebody's big finger was right there in the thing too.
Man, big finger. There's nothing in the world that's so divine like as a hamburger, juicy and fine. And I tell you, the Ukrainians are really turning some hamburger meat out here.
Someone said, "Get my mind out of the gutter." No, I know some of y'all were thinking that. I just said it out loud. Some people were looking at it thinking, "Huh, that's kind of odd."
Hey yo, man, Johnny,
what you doing over there?
Johnny Dang's up in the building, and he's giving out grills. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the Russians getting blasted by the 429th Achilles. And they certainly don't have an Achilles heel. They're hitting the Russians in their Achilles heel. Look at this BMP-3 get obliterated right here. Right down the hatch, cooking up nice. Call it Chef Ramsay, the way that thing cooks real nice. Oh, he tried to throw the AK at it. Not a good plan. Bad execution. Oh, yeah, it didn't turn out well. A benefit. Unfortunate. I don't know why I said benefit, but unfortunate.
Also, people were talking about the weather that they got. We're about to get that weather y'all got in California. It's coming on Saturday. It's on the way. Also, let me ban that person because I've warned them 2 times. I gave them a pass. I was trying to explain stuff, but they just didn't heed my warning.
Yeah, they just didn't heed it, did they? You know, we tried to give them a chance, but you know, that's just not how it works here in this channel. You know, if you
gave them 2 chances. 2 chances. Now you go.
You know, I don't know why in the world this channel brings in people who want to talk about politics and religion, because this is war. It's a little bit different than the other two. And someone's about to say, but war is politics. No, it's foreign policy or diplomacy. very different kind of a thing, because there is no such thing in a war as do we kill the Russians? Let's have an election. There's none of that. Like it's like that's not politics. It's a very different thing. It's diplomacy or foreign policy. But moving on from that and on into the Toretsk area, where we're able to see the Russians getting hit.
You go now. Yeah, you go now.
Man, we're about to turn into this is a Chinese shower of God. You go! Like we're about to turn into that.
Oh, leave now. Go. Someone said, no soup for you. Yeah, no soup for them.
And we can see the Russian vehicles burning down there. What a thing, I tell you, what a thing. Moving on from that and into the Toretsk region, we also get to see the Russians getting hit down here in Toretsk by the Predator unit. Not to be mistaken with Diddy, but we can see here the Predator unit hitting them hard. Not that kind of hard, by the way. It's not Diddy. No Diddy.
Yes, I'm in the same prison as Diddy, and you know, he seems real nice. I've only seen one piece of him so far.
It's like pause.
And when do you see this piece, and where did he touch you? Like it's like those are the next questions.
It's like, are we talking peace like Russia talks about a peace, like a piece of Ukraine? Or are we talking about peace as in like, you know, tranquility?
Man, Diddy saw that guy and he said, man, I want a piece of him. Like, it's like, wow. It's like, wow. But moving on from that, we also got to see Ukrainians conducting evacuations in Toretsk of some units. And we see the artillery coming down hot and heavy as this Ukrainian M113 is making the rounds.
Someone said, Puff Daddy. Honestly, I'm not sure how anybody didn't catch on before, like, you know, like with these names. Like, did these names not catch anybody's attention? Like Puff Daddy, Diddy. It's like, you know, I've never really like heard of the guy, to be honest with you. But I'm like, that name to me like rings a couple of alarm bells. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean?
But when you say Diddy, it's like it's not even that far from being like Diddy the Diddler. It's like, how in the world can no one see that coming? You know, it's like it's almost like it's like the evil guy in a show being called like McBloodface. It's like, well, obviously he's the evil guy. He's named evilly. Like, Diddy sounds so close to being Diddler. It's like, how in the world did no one catch on? Like, when I heard someone in elementary school say, I woke up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy, even in elementary school, I was like, that sounds wrong. Like, I was like, there's like something not that good sounding about that. And I didn't even know anything about the guy at all at that point, or even later on. I didn't know anything about him till recently, really.
Someone say he changed his name multiple times. Yeah, well, you know. Sometimes you gotta.
So is it for real? He's always been sus like an MF. Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of true, you know, like, but honestly, that's like with all the people in Hollywood, you know, like Weinstein, just like his whole presence is like some form of like an assault of a sort, like just looking at the guy. It's like, how in the world can no one see that coming? It's like honestly, it's like you would have to be blind to not see some of these people and like their questionability.
Well, I mean, when they got the money and the power, you got to overlook it sometimes. That's the way it kind of worked. But no, honestly, if I saw like Weinstein, like that dude looked so disheveled, like on a daily basis. Like he looked like he just rolled out of bed and threw a suit on from like the drawer or something. It's like, what the hell? It's like, and also that suit, by the way, what's that from? Like Men's Warehouse. Like that suit wasn't
Joseph
looking
A.
right.
Banks. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
what the hell?
I'm not dissing on it. If y'all got a suit from Joseph A. Banks, that's fine. But Weinstein was like a multimillionaire. It's like, you know, what is he wearing? And also number two, why does he look like that? Like, why is his hair like a rat's nest? That dude like was a little bit, yeah, you know. Ask Tarantino about him.
Meanwhile, Tarantino's out there. How do I write feet into my script? Like, it's like
And Weinstein said, "Good one."
Dude, Weinstein, like Weinstein heard that and said, dab me up, man. Like, dab me up. Like, it's like, but Weinstein was also doing a lot more questionable things than just that.
So you want to be in that film, do you? Well, it's like, you know, it's like, I guess some people are getting pretty desperate.
Oh, man. Man, there's a lot of people are getting kicks out of this. But meanwhile, this evacuation was successful by the Ukrainians. Very nice to see. And we see them here showing the Ukrainian soldiers. Once again, the police were involved in this action. Very nice to see.
Oh man, all the jokes coming in. It's like, oh my goodness. It's like also, it's like, you know, hearing the horror stories. It's like when somebody walks into an office and there's like a dirty couch in the corner or something and a sleazy looking dude like behind a desk. It's like, you know, does anybody get like a little bit like maybe they might need to like excuse themselves or something like that or leave the room or something? I'm like, you know, when they're a little bit strange on a vibe that you just can't really understand. It's like you might want to get up out of there. The money's probably not worth it.
Also, like, one thing I do have to say, like, this might be a bit of a hot take, but people like that wouldn't exist in the industry if there weren't people that were so desperate to try and make it that they would allow for people like that to exist. Like, if everyone just said no, then they really can't get anywhere. Like that's kind of like the in thing of it. You know, it's like I feel sorry for the people that, you know, were taken advantage of by that guy, Weinstein in particular, but it's like at the same time, it's like, you know, it's like if I was in that position, I'd be like, look, I want a job in show business, but not that badly. I'm good. And
Well, some of them apparently got trapped from the sounds of it.
Really?
Like some of them, I don't know all the exact details, but I think some of them felt like they were trapped or something. I'm not going to go any deeper than that because I don't know the whole story, but I think some of them felt like they sort of had to, I think, or something like that.
Huh. Man, that might be like a lot like Goebbels from Nazi Germany. Man, that guy was sick. Like, I don't know if you've heard the stories about him when he was a propaganda minister, but that guy was like legitimately sick.
Yeah, I mean, he sounded sick. Yeah.
Yeah, and also that name doesn't do him any good, Goebbels. Like, what the hell is that? But anyways, moving on from that and into the Pokrovsk area, we were able to see the Ukrainian Manticore unit hitting some Russians. And also I see some people saying some other things, and ugh, yikes, that is actually bad. I didn't know that. I only heard that apparently it was people wanting to make it in the business, because I don't really look into that stuff that much. But anyways, we can see the Ukrainians dropping a drone grenade here in a moment. And there it goes. And then it goes right into that dugout. And then this Russian went, oh, grenade. Let me go in there and take a look. Boom. And there it went. I don't know why he did that.
Oof.
Well, moving on from that and on into our big news in Pokrovsk today, we were able to hear that the Ukrainians took Shevchenko. So I don't really know if the whole Russian claim about them winning on all fronts is really working out, because they're losing for the most part on most fronts. So moving on from that and down into Kherson now, we also got to see a supply truck getting destroyed. And Matthew, I have to ask, is a microwave on anywhere?
No.
Oh, that's interesting, because my headset's like crackling like there is one that's on.
Oh, that must be the Russians that just pulled up in the backyard with the brain scrambler.
Not when I get done with you in my mind sifter. You know, like from Star Trek. Like,
honestly, these days the Russians pulled it with the mind scrambler. Like, you wouldn't really scramble the mind too much more than the current politics have scrambled it. So go right ahead.
I got to be honest with you. I'd rather take a worm than that radioactive bull. Like, you got hardcore. Like, UAB.
Man, I when they pulled up with the brain scrambler, I said, "Can you turn it down lower? The worm's complaining. It's too loud for the worm. It's sensitive hearing." And he said, "No."
Moving on up to Kyiv, it's time for us to cover the speech for President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the war, and he's getting back to the long-lasting speeches, 5 minutes and 40 seconds. That's how I like it. Without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогоднішній день – візит делегації парламенту Нідерландів. Я подякував за підтримку. Обговорили подальшу спільну роботу в Євросоюзі. Візит делегації Туреччини, урядовців та бізнесу цієї країни. Наші друзі, наші важливі партнери. Багато що дійсно об'єднує наші держави, і ми вдячні Туреччині за підтримку суверенітету України, нашої територіальної цілісності. Вдячні також за підтримку наших зусиль заради миру. Сьогодні говорили про подальшу спільну роботу, про взаємні інвестиції, про те, як турецький бізнес працюватиме в Україні, і про те, як наші підприємці будуть збільшувати роботу в Туреччині. Зараз ввечері разом з представниками Туреччини, разом з представниками всіх наших мусульман, військових та цивільних, разом з представниками кримсько-татарського народу взяли участь в іфтарі. Це вже добра українська традиція, традиція поваги до всіх, хто відзначає Рамадан. І сьогодні всі, хто був на іфтарі, говорили про те, як важливо, щоб молитви заради миру, заради України допомогли нам захистити нашу державу, нашу незалежність і якнайшвидше завершити цю війну і гарантувати безпеку. Тим більше, що зараз ми всі почули з Росії дуже передбачувані, дуже маніпулятивні слова Путіна у відповідь на ідею тиші на фронті. Він фактично готує відмову станом на зараз. Путін, звісно, боїться сказати прямо президенту Трампу, що хоче продовжувати цю війну, хоче вбивати українців. І тому вони там в Москві обставляють ідею тиші такими передумовами, щоб взагалі нічого не вийшло. Або щоб не виходило якнайдовше. Путін часто так робить. Не каже ні напряму, але робить так. Так, що практично тільки все затягує та унеможливлює нормальні рішення. Ми вважаємо, що це все зараз чергові російські маніпуляції. Була американська пропозиція щодо безумовної тиші у небі, на морі та на фронті. Ми в Україні сприйняли цю пропозицію. Від американської сторони ми чули, що є готовність організувати контроль та верифікацію. І це реально забезпечити з американськими можливостями, з європейськими можливостями. І щоб за час тиші підготувати відповіді на всі питання про довгострокову безпеку та реальний надійний мир і покласти на стіл план завершення війни. Україна готова працювати максимально швидко, максимально конструктивно. Ми говорили про це американським представникам. Про це знають і наші європейські партнери. Всі наші партнери у світі. Ми не ставимо умов, які щось ускладнюють. Це Росія робить. Як ми завжди говорили, єдиний, хто буде все затягувати, єдиний, хто буде неконструктивний, це Росія. Їм треба війна. Путін вкрав роки миру і продовжує цю війну день за днем. Зараз треба на нього тиснути, треба вводити санкції, які допоможуть. Будемо працювати і надалі з нашими американськими партнерами, з нашими європейськими партнерами, з усіма у світі, хто хоче миру, щоб примусити Росію до завершення війни. І ще одне. Хочу відзначити наших воїнів, які попри все тримають позиції на землі і завдяки цьому дають шанс дипломатії. 3-я бригада Національної гвардії, також 3-я окрема штурмова бригада, 59-та окрема штурмова бригада безпілотних сил, 425-й окремий штурмовий полк. Дякую усім вам, воїнам. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто захищає Україну, хто допомагає, хто дбає про нашу державу і наших людей, хто працює на українську стійкість. Обов'язково забезпечимо Україні достойний мир. Слава Україні!
And
Herom Slava.
And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1114. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And the quote of the night is, "Wars are not funny at y'all." Well, that's an interesting one.
Thank you, buddy.
Oh man, gee, isn't war hilarious? Man, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny to see that the Russians started a war and they're losing it? That's the comedy in it. That's the fun in it. Is that
Would you rather me grovel? Would you rather me sob through the news? I mean, I mean, what do you want us to be, like a crisis actor or something? I mean, you can either grovel or you can simply work your way through it. What do you want, bot? Come on.
It's better to cry through every day because the tears don't stop. It's all over. Oh, the West is done. The Roman Empire. Oh, Chud Maxing, billion most fraud. Oh, it's all over. Oh my God. Well, anyways, moving on from that, it's time for us to get on into the rest of our question segment for the night. And we have a lot, a load of different kinds of questions to talk about, loads of super chats, loads of live chats, as a matter of fact, and we have just a ton of fun to have with all of y'all. But beyond that, now that I've gotten my my at least virtue signaling cry out of the way, so that way we can hopefully have a lot of people stop whining and complaining that we're not crying enough. I hope that was enough. We are going to be moving on into those questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Oh, I see what they want. They want us to be like Jake Trapper when he comes on CNN and he's acting all like pouty face and stuff, like over everything, like, oh, it's just the news of the day. It's just so gloomy, so dreary. They want us to be like that. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to adopt the pouty face. That's not happening. And also, that's probably why the ratings suck, because nobody wants a pouty person telling them the news. That's just my assumption.
Let's go look at the ratings. Let's go look.
Oh, we have the ratings? Oh, look, we have the stats here, folks.
Let's see. Mainstream news ratings. I know that we can get them. So.
Also, I meant Tapper, by the way. I don't know why I said Trapper. It's Tapper.
Wait a minute. What? That's it? That's it? Fox only gets 2 million views a day?
2 million views across total day. Let's see here. Well, let's see. Oh, no, hold on. I'm trying to break this down. 353,000 viewers during prime time. So that's the most important number right there. So their prime time, like the main time that people come on their show after getting off work, it's 353,000 views.
So, but I believe this is over a whole month. Let's see. Yeah, it appears that this is over the whole month.
The whole month?
Yeah, this is over the whole month, apparently, and then it breaks it down by day. Like a total day, like peaks, lows, and things like that. But let's look at
Wait a minute. When was this article written? Because MSNBC is having some difficulty, to my understanding.
January.
It was written this year?
Yeah, this
Where the hell are they getting these stats from? I thought MSNBC was, like, dying.
Well, apparently not, at least in terms of the numbers. Maybe there's some sort of, like, corporate structuring where they're losing money or hemorrhaging it, maybe. But let's see. Was 734 and 560,000 viewers, respectively. It attracted 63,000. Oh, yeah, that's a lot lower. 63,000 in prime time and 45,000 viewers during the total day. That is nothing. We actually are kind of close to these people.
Well, we get around 3.5 to 4 million plus viewers a month. So that tells everybody what we're kind of sitting.
Hold up, wait a minute. If they get 2.78 million total viewers, is that over the whole month or just over the day?
I can't tell. Like, it says across total day, it averaged 1.9 million viewers, but I don't really know.
That might be shocking, because if that is over the whole month, this is one. By the way, just to share this with y'all, this is actually a lower month that we've had just last month in February for viewership, and we still got. Let me make sure that I get the number correct for y'all. We got 3.5 million views that month. So if this is over the whole month of January, well, actually, what did we get in January more so? We got 5.7 million views over the month of January. So if that's how many views Fox News got over a month, we actually outdid Fox News by about a factor of 2 on monthly viewership, if we're getting that correct. So, dude,
is that before or after they fired the loud laughing man?
That's after, because, he's been gone for a while now, like at least a year, I think. So, That's interesting. So what is CNN at? Because, you know, that this is something else that I also want to point out to folks. Fox News is the biggest news channel in America by far. It beats out everyone by a significant margin. So it's always funny to me whenever you click on Fox News, you have Sean Hannity sitting there going, you see, we're not the mainstream news, because it's like they are literally the epitome of mainstream news. They're the largest viewed channel on there. It's like, that's
No,
a
he's
little...
right. They're not the mainstream news. They're the mainstream entertainment channel.
Yeah. Also, Richard Rohde said those are the daily numbers. That's still a little crazy to think that they're only bringing in 3 million views a day. Like, that's not a lot when you think about that. Because on one day on this channel, which was our peak viewership day in history, we had, I think, 1.3 million views that day, which means that we were larger than MSNBC with that viewership on that day by quite a significant margin. So it's a little bit wild to think. And once again, I want to remind everyone here, we're getting viewership that sometimes, rarely, can actually beat out MSNBC and easily beats out CNN some days. And we don't have a multi-million-dollar corporation, and we also don't have hundreds or thousands of employees. And we're still outdoing these people in viewership. And
Yeah,
honestly,
like I get paid, like, you know, I'll occasionally get a block of cheese or something like that. Like we don't have that kind of budget.
yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like, sometimes I might get a tank of gas, maybe, like, a nice meal, but, you know, we aren't working on, like, Wolf Blitzer kinds of multi-million-dollar budgets, and we're outdoing these people. That's a little wild, honestly. But let's see here what CNN does. 522,000 total viewers, and 118,000 live viewers, I suppose, during prime time. That is abysmal. Dude, that is honestly crazy. And also, apparently, Jake Tapper is the top performer at CNN now. It's not Wolf
What?
Blitzer.
That's crazy. I thought it was
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper.
Let's see. Took the top spot among the A2554 crowd. But apparently, Jake Tapper
You know
is
the
the
big
total...
boy at CNN. The big boy at CNN that they lost, and this probably sunk CNN was when they lost Don Lemon.
Hell no, dude. Hell no. Don Lemon, losing Don Lemon only helped them. Like, honestly, man, like, it probably only helped them. I've never even watched MSNBC, to be entirely honest with y'all. We kind of just flip in between Fox and CNN to see what everyone else is saying, sometimes, and then we usually, like, dog on them. But there is no way that The Five was the most watched program. Are you kidding me, dude? Everyone's watching that guy absolutely flop as a comedian. Like, I'm not good at making jokes. I'll make it clear. I don't think I'm great at it. But there is a guy on there who, like, intentionally tries to be funny. Like, he doesn't even, like, just flop. Like, I know I flop. Like, I know that. But this guy actually thinks he's funny. And it's cringeworthy to watch. Like, it's rough. And apparently that's their most watched program.
True.
Dude, crazy. But anyways, with that, I hope that kind of covers that somewhat. That's actually a little bit shocking how those numbers were breaking down there. But anyways, it is time for us to move on. Also, someone said Don Lemon is booming on YouTube. I'll be honest with you. I haven't heard that, but considering that Tucker Carlson is pretty much just zooming on along with this massive following, it's honestly shocking. Because you know, like, today I heard that he was pretty much simping for the Hamas or the Palestinians for the large part, or their like Hezbollah, Hamas, such things like that. He was simping for him. He was like, "Why is America doing all of this?" It's like, are you just like an anti-American, like, treasonist? Like, do you just support everyone that hates America? Like, the guy claims to be a true patriot, and then the groups that he sympathizes with are the groups that want to kill Americans. It's like, honestly, I'll be honest with y'all. If anyone was truly a enemy sympathizer, I think that Tucker Carlson would fit the bill. Like, he pretends to be an American patriot, and he only supports groups that hate Americans. Like, those are the only groups he supports. I haven't seen him support a single group that is actually patriotic. It's always just the ones that are, like, half lukewarm patriotic. They really aren't patriotic, rather than saying they love America. But it's kind of like the same claim that people have made where they're like, I'm not racist, but, and then they go on to say the most racist thing ever. He's the same thing as far as patriots go. He's like, I love America, but, and then he pretty much says that he hates America and everything about it and everyone living in it, and he loves everyone else. And it's like, you know, it's just so lame to me that that guy has a following, because it's like there's true American patriots out there like us, you know, like we just love America unconditionally and only look to want to improve the lot of everyone involved, you know, and try and actually provide solutions. And then there's people like him who just claim that they love America, but they really hate it, and everything they say at least proves that they hate it. And then they get a following. It's like that's just
Oh,
sad, really.
also, let me clear this up for folks because people are saying, well, Don Lemon's got 600,000 plus subs. What you guys talking about? Yeah, he's got 620,000 subs, but here's the trick of YouTube, folks. You can have a large amount of subs. Like there's channels out there that we compete with in the Ukraine category that have like 800,000 subscribers, but their video viewership is where the real truth lies. Don Lemon is getting 7,000 views a video with 620,000 subscribers. And let's see, he's getting 14, 25. He has one here at 13, one at 7,000 views. This is what you call a dead channel at this point, is what Don Lemon's got going on here. So, yeah, he's got subscribers, people that signed up originally, but apparently it's so uninteresting that people don't watch anymore. So he has a bunch of inactive subscribers at this point.
Hold up, let me go click on this channel. Hopefully there's not a trailer. Yeah, there's a trailer. All right, I think Delorio's muted. Let's go check out the video views. Good God, man. 7,000 views? 13,000? Oh my God, dude, this guy is getting as much views as the Veterans guy. He's getting as much as him.
Hot Dog Man might be able to compete with Don Lemon.
Dude, Hot Dog Man is competing with Don Lemon. like unironically, he actually is. That is abysmal. This guy's putting out like full-length videos, mind all of you. And he's getting like sometimes, albeit, he'll get like 75,000 views. And on other videos, he's getting like 7,000 views. On YouTube, with how it works these days, subscribers actually don't matter at all. With how the algorithm is structured, it matters about the marketability of your videos individually. So your videos themselves have to be good. So this is kind of like a little bit of the behind the scenes thing that we work with and game plan every day, is that video titles and thumbnails have to be wildly good, and then the video itself has to be incredibly good too for it to succeed. So our videos are right now, to just be frank with y'all, are going through a low point. Like we usually would consider the viewership that we're getting these days in our videos to be paramount to failures based off of what we got used to for like the past 6 months to 8 months. But even still, they're getting on average 100,000 to 140,000 views a video. Some of them got a little bit lower than that, and we were like, what the hell's going on? But most of them get around that. And before that, the lowest videos that we were getting were around 180,000 views a video per day. Like we were doing those daily. This guy's putting out a video almost every day, and he's getting like 7,000 views to 20,000 views on average a pop. His imprint on the internet is insignificant. Like it actually doesn't exist. Like that is actually on Hot Dog Man's level for the large part on the kind of viewership he gets. So the Hot Dog Man and Don Lemon on YouTube, as far as their viewership or exposure is concerned, have almost no imprint on the internet. Like they are a very niche kind of a group, or they're just very niche with their following. Like you're not going to run into a lot of Don Lemon fans out there. You have a higher chance of running into Enforcer fans than you do even a listener of Don Lemon at this point. So
yeah, I think people love channels like ours a lot more than what the mainstream offers these days, because you'll hear bullcrap on mainstream media and there's no way to like respond to it as like the audience. But YouTube streams and social media streams, the audience is directly here. Like you're right here right now saying it as we're live. So if we say something that sounds stupid or we say something that's incorrect, we get literally fact checked on the spot by just everyday people. There's no fact check exclusive group that jumps in and says, oh, that doesn't align with our political beliefs. We don't like that. It's just everyday people jumping in and saying what they think. So I think to a lot of the mainstream people, that would scare the hell out of them, because they're like, oh, crap, like I can't handle people like correcting me on the spot. It's going to make me crumble. But that's different about social media. I think that's what's having it take off a bit.
yeah, that's wild though, man. Like Don Lemon actually has like no following. And that's also something shocking as well, because Matthew and me were talking about this the other day. Many people might know this, and this always just blows us away with how this works. Michelle Obama made a podcast, and everyone knows who Michelle Obama is. Like, I'm not here to say whether she's good or bad, but she had a massive marketing campaign go out. It was a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign for this podcast she had that was coming up. And I think it was like a day or two ago, it finally came out. And what was the viewership on it, Matthew? Like the total viewership of her podcast when it went live?
It was low. I think it was somewhere in like the 10,000 range or something.
I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, there was loads of exposure on it, loads of advertising. It goes live and only 10,000 views. Like, that is a non-existent following right there. We can put anything out on this channel for the large part, and we can guarantee get at least 100,000 views nearly on any kind of a video, which means that we have a very strong and lively following. But when it comes to people like Michelle Obama or Don Lemon or even other people, they have like no following, which is a little bit wild to see. That can just happen. Like, it doesn't translate over into any kind of like a social media impact. People who were somebody in another sphere, I guess you could say, come on to here and then they're nobodies. And then we're a somebody on here and then we're practically a nobody everywhere else. It's a little bit wild with that. But anyways, with that, I like an interesting little discussion there, nonetheless. Like, just kind of interesting. Nothing really to take out of it, but still wild, nevertheless. Anyways, with that, also, Caitlin Williams said less than 5,000 views. Dang, that is terrible.
On what?
Apparently on Michelle Obama's podcast.
Let me go look. Let's see here. Let's see. It's not even popping up in the search. Well, hold on a second. Typing it in real quick. Where the hell is it? Oh, let's see. I think here it is. Okay, so oh wow, they got some views all of a sudden. Let's see here. The first day or two, there was hardly anything. Now there's all of a sudden there's 28,000 views. Let's see here. There's one here with 108,000 views. That kind of went a little bit weird. It's like it started off small, which it should have started off large, and it went the opposite way. Interesting. And then there's one 13 hours ago that only has 20,000 views. And then there's one that has 50,000 views. And I got the impression that they did some marketing for those. So if you're getting views like that after a ton of marketing, and also only 25,000 subscribers, I mean, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I mean, that's not a good start, especially when you already have a following like that. That indicates a lot of people don't want to listen for some reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, you would feel like that is the other way around because you feel like people have been brought in by the marketing and then would be leaving over time. Instead, nobody came in from the marketing and now it's starting to climb. Like that's like the kind of growth pattern we had on this channel, and we had no marketing. So that's a little interesting. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into some questions because we've been yapping about ratings for a pretty good moment. We sound like this guy talking about nothing but ratings. But with that, it is time for us to get on into the next one. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping to our first super chat, the last segment here. This one goes to none other than BC Skyman, the channel legend, and thank you very much, BC, for that $80 support and being the largest super chatter of the night, and we appreciate it. He did not leave a comment, but he did mention that he needs to help keep the lights on, and thank you, BC, for helping to keep the lights on, because honestly, the energy costs these days are going through the roof. I'm pretty sure that everybody's seeing that. But even for our place that we have, which is not very large, the energy costs are insane, which is just, I hope they get that fixed because that is not supposed to be like that. But thank you very much, BC, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the massive support, BC Skyman. That is absolutely impressive and amazing. And I got to thank you for helping us to keep those lights on because we always talk about those lights. But the lights are crazily expensive these days, like keeping them on. And we were like, dang, look at that. Because our place isn't incredibly big. Like it's an average sized place. Actually, it's smaller than average according to what is apparently average in the US for the average sized dwelling, which is around, I think, 2,500 square feet. I think that was the average a couple of years back. I think it would be the same. Ours is about less than half of that. So a little bit interesting that we have such a high energy bill and a light bill, really electricity bill. But beyond that, I thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to be on here, right now. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see people in the live chat saying, they're talking about somebody's channel. I don't know whose channel this is, by the way, but they said they could make their titles a little less clickbaity, though. Here's the trick with YouTube, folks. Like, you have to be clickbaity to an extreme, or not to an extreme, but to some extent. but you have to keep in mind that it has to be actually what you're talking about in the video, because you're competing with thousands and thousands of other people that create content. So you have to make the thumbnails and titles stand out, but you don't want to put lies on the thumbnail either. But it's a tricky balance. Like, you know, we've stepped over the line a couple of times and had to reel it back in because we went a little too far. But it's a tricky thing to make sure it's truthful, but also catchy enough to get people's attention. So some people don't quite have the hang of it, and some people are called clickbaity, and then some people do have the hang of it, and then some people don't ever get it at all, and they never get any views. So it's really tricky. That's probably honestly the trickiest thing with doing videos, is trying to figure out how to title it and how to make the thumbnail to actually get views, but not go too crazy with it. So it's just a little bit interesting, but there's no like surefire way to do it. If you ever try to do it, you'll understand how tricky it is. But anyways, jumping on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Rick Galinchin, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Rick, as well, for that support. He said, hello from Vancouver, and I love you guys, and take one from the chat.
And hello to Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. Great to have you here once again. And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and being one of our Canadian viewers from Vancouver. Vancouver. There's a rail yard right here. I have a way of sniffing them out. I don't know how. Also, where does that go? Nowhere. It goes nowhere. What's the point of that then? Like, where do they, what is the point of this? Let's find out.
Oh,
Canadian National. What are you saying oh for? That's not that bad. That's not that. Oh, what?
oh.
There's nothing
whoa,
there.
Whoa. They've got stuff on the tracks. They've got couches on the track.
I honestly think that's supposed to be some sort of like a temporary stop, like a concrete. Yeah, it's a concrete. What the hell? What kind of a jank rail yard is that? Let's have a siding here, but it goes to nowhere, and it stops right there. This is a rough part of town, by the way. Actually, this is. Like, I was trying to make it sound like it wasn't that bad. It is. It's a little rough. Main Street Science World. What does their metro look like? Oh, actually, it is pretty nice. Let's see. Oh, what's this?
TransLink.
Dude, this guy is hustling some watches. I'm not sure if he bought all of them himself.
Rolex is here. Get your Rolexes while they're hot. They're straight from the counter.
Get your citizen. It's like or something.
Get
I
your
don't know.
citizen. What the hell?
There's a watch brand called Citizen, man.
Okay. I was about to say, get you a citizen. I was about to say, what are they doing? Selling like gold cards out there or something?
5 million. Get your citizen. It's like, oh, look at this. Look at this. They've got Science World. See, it's all about science, and they have Monsters Inc. here.
Hey, look.
Hey. That was definitely me in high school, like really shaggy like that. But let's see. Growth spurt. Yes, the growth spurt. One does know. That's a T-Rex.
Hey yo, this T-Rex is busted.
Bro, this T-Rex has a receding hairline. Like, pretty tough for him. He's had better days. He's in a midlife crisis at this point. The wife doesn't like him being around and makes him sleep on the couch. But let's see, what else is there in Vancouver? Let's go look at downtown Vancouver. Now, this is the nice part of town. There's always a bad part and a nice part to every city. But this is nice. I would like to go to Vancouver one day and see it for myself. I would bet you that the Central Station, there it is, Waterfront Station. This must be their Central Station. Let's take a look. I'm sure it's serviced by Via Rail, which would be the Canadian version of Amtrak, and it sure as hell is. Can
you ride a train from Seattle to Vancouver?
You actually can. It actually is the Amtrak Cascade service. It goes all the way from Eugene, Oregon, all the way up to Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it actually is pretty cool. Like, let me see here. Let's go to King Street Station, which is Seattle's main station. And I should.
Hey, I've been there.
Yes, you have. You have been here.
I've been there.
Here we go, King Street Station. That's what we're looking for. We should be able to find the Amtrak. Okay, so the Coast Starlight, the Empire Builder, and the Cascades all terminate here at the King Street Station. But what we want to see is the Amtrak Cascades, which is this line. Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't show its whole route. But it goes all the way up Why does this one say, oh, that's the Coast Starlight? I was about to be, what the hell? I was like, why is that going into Los Angeles? But this one, see, the 6 p.m. Amtrak Cascades goes to Vancouver, Canada.
Interesting. Yeah, that'd be fascinating.
Yeah, actually, the Amtrak Cascades has 2 Vancouvers on its route. Vancouver, Canada, and Vancouver, Washington right here.
Interesting. Yeah, we might have to go see that sometime. Not this one. Not this one. I want to see this one.
Yeah.
I want to see Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, God, this one was rough. Oh, God. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that.
Are they going to track us? Are they going to track us in Canada and keep track of us like China if we go there now?
Oh, nah, they probably wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
I think we're doing that to Canadians now when they come to the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, they did something where it's like there's some restrictions on like Canadians. They have to register or something like that when they come here or something.
Man, I feel sorry for those for those people that we did know, because there's probably gonna be a lot more uncovered doing that. Wait a minute, why are they going to Gaza? Like, or something like, you know, like it's like but take a look at that, man. That's the Cascades with the Horizon cars. I want to see if we can find the Talgo cars, because oh, look at that, an old Santa Fe that looks just like raw. Like, that thing is just bad looking. And then we have this brand new Union Pacific excess height car, or a high cube, that looks new, that already has graffiti on it. You know, they say, Matthew, that sometimes the I guess you could say, let's see, the conductors, not really the conductors, I forgot who it is right now, but some of the yard masters try and keep East Coast cars on the East Coast and never send them west, because really all the graffiti happens whenever a rail car shows up in California for some reason. Like, that's pretty much where all the graffiti shows up.
Interesting. So if you want your rail cars defaced, take it to California.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it's a bit of a shame. You know, it's a bit of a shame with that. But I'm trying to see, man. Look at that, though. It really is an old Santa Fe relabeled as a BNSF. And it's also a remote-controlled one, so it's a drone. That's actually pretty cool.
That's scary.
Well, they've had these for a long, long time. Like, you know, this is where that guy has, like, that goofy-sized remote controller, like, wrapped around his neck on a strap, you know, with a giant long antenna coming out of it, and he's, like, pretty much running it like a PlayStation. Like, this has been around for years. Like, that was around when we were a kid.
Could you imagine if that thing just like lost control or something like that, or just started going like out of control? Like, that'd be scary as hell.
That would be kind of scary, I'm not gonna lie. Man, I cannot find for the life of me the freaking Talgo cars I was wanting to show you, like the little low ones. But there's an F40 from the Cascades. But I'll be dipped, man. It looks like they've pretty much replaced everything already with Horizon cars, which is a freaking shame, because they don't look as good as the Talgos. Let me go see if I can just type in Amtrak Cascades, because the interior of these was just so much cooler. So here we go. Those little Talgo car sets.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and let me see if I can get you a picture of the interior, because they are cool. Also, that's interesting looking, man. It's almost like it's just like crawling through like a ditch down there. But let's see. Oh yeah, here's its route. Here's its service route, or map. So it stops in all of these places, including Vancouver, Canada. I think it's the only Amtrak service that does that. And let's see. I'd be dipped, man. Where's the word? Oh, here's the inside of the Talgo, of the cafe, or the dining car, if you want to call it that. That's the interior. Really cool.
Pretty nice. I like that.
Yeah, man, and it's got a map of the Washington and Canada coastline up there on the roof.
That's very neat.
Yeah, man, it's really cool. It's like really nice and high end for like Amtrak. And also we can see this bistro car that got in a derailment.
Now see, that's why I personally wouldn't get on the train.
Well, man, the freaking planes were on fire at Denver today. It's like, man, that's why I wouldn't get on there. Like, yeah, I'd rather get burned to death in a plane or like crash. Like that's better.
I look at it as free heating, personally.
Honestly, man, real optimist there. I gotta appreciate that. But also, man, look at the ridership, man. It skyrocketed after the whole Wuhan Whirlybird thing. Like, it got up way ahead of what the ridership was in its peak at like 2011, which was like 850 something thousand.
Yeah.
Now it's almost up to like 920, I'd assume.
Yeah, people are real anxious to get back out after getting locked up for so long. They were just ready to go, like, you know.
Man, I mean, I guess so. I guess they were just ready to get rolling, you know what I mean? But anyways, With that, it is time for us to get on to the next question, but a huge thanks to you once again for supporting this channel all the way from the amazing country of Canada and all the way from Vancouver, which one day I do want to see. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to none other than Butchie777, longtime channel legend, by the way, who put in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. And also, let me get rid of these bots doing some weird things in here. But Butchie, thank you very much for the 50. And they said, for the pizza fund, and not sure if you can answer this without getting political, but my best friend lives in Squamish, and she is extremely worried about being invaded as she's so near the border. But what do you think the likelihood of it happening is? And LSA. Oh, they're talking about Canada? Oh,
Yeah.
The likelihood of invading Canada is 0, in my opinion. We're never going to invade Canada.
Yeah, I think that would be ridiculous, honestly. I don't like saying this because I think it's really stupid that I have to say this for statements from the president. I think it's some kind of a joke. Like, I really do, because there's just no way that that could be serious. I mean, that is just truly ludicrous. I don't know, some people are gonna be like, no, he's a terrible man. You know, it's like, but like, speaking about it from a realistic standpoint, it's absolutely ludicrous. Like, I just don't ever think that that could happen. Like, there were also some statements floated that we were going to annex the Great Lakes. For what purpose? And also take over the southern tip of Ontario. And it's like, what purpose? Like, I don't really get any of that. It doesn't make any sense. I think that that would be met with international condemnation, because it would be an illegal invasion, an armed invasion for that matter, of Canada. And I have a feeling that everyone in the world, including the Russians, would take a good chance of spitting on the United States at that point and just sanctioning the hell out of us, to the point that we end up like some sort of a mega North Korea, with how strict the sanctions would be. So I have a feeling that that probably would not happen. It's just insane. Like, that's the best way I can put it. It's insane. It's incredibly unrealistic. And I know that a lot of people always want to say things like, you know, oh, you know, like people used to say that Biden was going to put like Republicans in like concentration camps, and now they're saying that Trump will really invade Canada. It's probably not going to happen. This is more of like it's really not going to happen, because that would be legitimately insane, and the entire international world would come together to condemn the United States for that one, because there's no way in hell that the United States would ever do anything like that. And also, I see someone saying, he's dead serious? Nah, I doubt it. I really do doubt it. But anyways, let's take a look at Squamish. Oh, very nice. Very pretty area. Very pretty area. Wow. That is actually very
nice.
pretty.
Natural beauty here.
Yeah, wow. That's very impressive. You know, maybe we should. Like, I'm just kidding, by the way, but this is a very pretty place. And look at that little, wow, look, they actually float the logs down the river here still.
That's like when they used to do those, like, diamond schemes or something like that with those logs.
I don't know what that is, but yeah. like
You know when they stuff the logs with diamonds?
No, I don't remember that.
You never saw that on Scooby-Doo?
No, I was thinking about that Paul Bunyan cartoon. You know the one I'm talking about, right? Like, where they're like, Paul Bunyan, he's 63x handles high. You know, and he was like jumping around on the logs, and they were like moving them with the bill hooks around to get them to the lumber mill. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Do you know that all those cartoons were propaganda?
Obviously, but they were great. I loved them. Like, they were wonderful. Like, dude, like Casey Jones, like, you know, Casey Jones, the railroad engineer, Johnny Appleseed, kind of like the farmer representation, John Henry, the industrial worker, the steel layer, you know, it's like they were such good cartoons. Like, I loved all of those. Those were really good cartoons. And then they were narrated by James Earl Jones in the DVD release later on. It's like it was just a win-win all around. It was such a great thing. Made by Disney of all companies, but Disney was pretty solid with that. Like, I think that they did really good with that. And they represented like every facet of America that way with that sort of a deal. And it really made you like, wow, there's like some really cool like actual folk heroes of America that truly did exist. You know, and of course were, you know, created into legend, but still really, really cool. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well. Maybe I can bring some nostalgia to y'all, to showing y'all like the John Henry cartoon. Because it is so, like, honestly, some of the greatest things that they made, were these animations, in my opinion. Like, beats out most of their animated movies and stuff, because it was about, like, the hard-working American spirit. Y'all know that cartoon, right? Like, You know, like this cartoon, there was the Casey Jones one, Johnny Appleseed, and I think there was a couple of others too. But they were like goated. Like they were so good. Like I thought
I
they were
thought Paul
great.
Bunyan had an axe.
Yeah, Paul. Well, this is John Henry. You know, he's the steel layer for the railroads. You know, the one that beat the machine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, like believe it or not, that story is largely true. Like it actually is true. Most of it is. Of course, it was created into legend and myth to a sense, so a lot of it was exaggerated. But they actually did end up beating the machine, and the machine did have a boiler explosion. That's largely why they beat it, is because it blew up. But they still beat it, and he died of a heart attack shortly afterwards. So you know, pretty interesting with that. But he still managed through his effort of digging that tunnel. Largely with the crew of folks. It wasn't just him alone, but largely through digging that tunnel, they ensured that the railroad bosses didn't fire his crew and replace them with a tunnel digging machine, and everyone kept their jobs. So a pretty interesting kind of a story with that. But then there was Paul Bunyan, which was also another one. This one is a legend. Like honestly, man, like the whole song, like Ox the Blue Babe, you know, all that thing. Like that was a great cartoon. Like
Yeah, it was crazy. This was made in 1958. That was a long time ago.
yeah, but they were just such good cartoons. I love these cartoons so much. And honestly, it makes you like proud to be an American because like it's not like, you know, like some sort of a crazy story, you know, where like a kid learned the feelings of love. Like it was like, no, like these are like real Americans doing real things that you'll do in your daily life, and they're like legends for it. And they were really good at what they did. It's like such cool stories, honestly. I like the concept of them and the premise of what they were trying to go for. And also it was like the perseverance of the American spirit, all that kind of thing. And the children's cartoons. That's the best part about it. But of course, all of y'all know that my favorite is Casey Jones. Like it just well, that is not Casey Jones. Casey Jones Disney cartoon. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is the one. This is the goated one. This guy was on time. Real guy, by the way. He actually did die in a train crash. But absolutely goated guy. He was.
Did he die because he was reckless, or was that just made up for the cartoon?
He didn't die because he was reckless. He died because of a signaling error on the rail route that he was on. But this guy, dude, was absolutely goated in real life too. Like his trains were always on time, not from recklessness, but he would sometimes get his actual trains up to 80 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. So this guy was pushing the high speed category of rail in the late 1890s and the early 1900s. Like a true legend of the American railroads. But he died in an accident. But he was still a hero because he told his firemen to jump from the train when he saw that there was a freight train that was trying to get into a siding and it hadn't gotten all the way off. So he told his firemen to jump, and he kept his hand, he tied his hand into the whistle chain above him and just held the whistle to pretty much, you know, tell everyone on the freight train to hop and run for their lives. And also for everyone in the passenger train that he was carrying, the express mail train, to pretty much try and, you know, brace themselves. And he was able to slow down the train enough by staying in the cab that no one on his train got killed and no one else on the freight train got killed, and the only person that got killed was him. And when they got to his body, his hand was still coiled around the train's whistle chain and was still pulling down on it even at that point. So a lot of people considered him to be an absolute hero because he was selfless at the last minute, like, and just sacrificed himself to save everyone else. So that's largely why he's personified in song and legend and stuff like that, is because he was a selfless engineer.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I remember he was driving reckless in these cartoons right here. They made him out to be like a super speeder or something like that in these cartoons. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that it wasn't that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story though, a really cool one. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. I hope we talked about that enough. And also, Matthew, just to keep a track of time, how many super chats do we have left?
So we will need to speed up a tab because we have about 35 left.
Dang, yeah, I was wondering because I was like, we've rambled for like almost an hour now. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Hoodoo, for that support. He said, Putin is a psychopath like Hitler. He will not retreat. Hitler lost whole armies by not permitting retreat, and Putin will only stop if convinced that he cannot win, but he will never negotiate unless it's his opponents that surrender. Honestly, I would agree with that 100%. Like before now, there was no definitive concrete proof that Putin was going to go all the way. But now that he's rejected the ceasefire and he knows the consequences of doing that is going to be the U.S. is going to arm Ukraine. that pretty much proves with evidence that he is a psychopath because he's going all the way. It doesn't matter if the country of Russia is destroyed. He is going to go as far as he can, and I would agree. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd actually agree with that as well, Hoodoo Texas. I think that's a very solid assessment, and he's getting to the point of near madness. Well, he's at the point of madness at this point with what he's continuing to insist. He insists that the war keeps going, and they win exactly what they want, how they want, and no one can get in their way, period. Take it or leave it. And so with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And excuse me, this one goes to Just Chillin', who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And I do not see a comment left by Just Chillin', but nonetheless, thank you very much for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Just Chillin', and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And of course, I got to thank you massively for that. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to really keep this thing running day in and day out. And I got to thank everyone who's supporting the channel because you all make it possible. And also the people who don't support the channel make it possible as well because you all give us an audience to be able to talk to and tell the news to. We're happy to have all of y'all here. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rye Guy SR, who throws in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that $20 support. And we appreciate it very, very much. And thank you very much for supporting the channel very consistently. He said, hey guys, I know you touched on it, but with the details about the captain of the ship crash being Russian, do you think that coupled with saying no to the ceasefire will make Washington lose its patience and LSA?
I think it may. I don't really think the crash will have a lot to play into it because there's a decent amount of plausible deniability considering the fact that it was a Portuguese-owned vessel, although captained by a Russian. There's enough countries involved that there's a decent amount of plausible deniability that there was any deliberate act with that. But as far as the Russians shooting down the ceasefire today, that's going to end up biting them in the ass pretty clearly come some time around. So I would say on that, wait and see. We'll wait and see. It's going to not end up well for them. And so with that, I think you want to give her support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Matthew, I was just wanting to make sure we didn't miss the one from Danny B. Is that further down the spreadsheet, or did we already get that one?
No, it's further down.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And with that, I mean, we're talking about the $30 one, right?
Let's see here, a $30 one. Where are you seeing that?
Up at the top of the live chat right now, because I noticed that we were getting into like the 20s and the 15s, and I was like, I think we missed his. It's good.
Well, I marked it down as a 20. I don't know why I did that, but no, it's down there. It's just not marked as a 30. So I've remarked it. Sorry about that, Danny.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I was just wanting to make sure on that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
So our next one goes to, guess who? It goes to Danny B, who puts in that $30 donation. And thank you very much, Danny, for the 30. It was not a 20, and for some reason it got bumped down as a marked as a 20. But thank you very much, Danny, for that support. And he said, good evening, Enforcers, Chef Danny, and wanted to say thank you guys for all the hard work. And one of my first jobs was on the old Colorado ski train. It's not around anymore, and it's not the Amtrak, and I cleaned it daily.
Oh, that's really cool. Let me go pull that up. The Colorado ski train. I know that Amtrak runs a similar service these days. Is it the Winter Park Express? Wait, no. Is this a Denver and Rio Grande? No. It's actually just the Rio Grande. Yeah, it is a Rio Grande ski train. Huh. The Rio Grande ski train. This was it. Used a series of F-40s to pull it. And that is one long train. Look at that thing, man. It goes all the way around the corner back there. That thing was huge. Jeez.
That's a big train right there.
Like, good Lord. And this is the Denver and Rio Grande ski train. Honestly, man, that Denver and Rio Grande, like, orangish color actually is, it's popping a little bit. I like it.
I don't like it. I don't like it. It looks like some type of, like, safety color or something like that. I like the other ones.
Huh? What? What do you mean? Anyways, I'm not gonna have that defamation here. I'm just kidding.
Defamation.
I'm just kidding.
Accusations.
I'm just kidding. Don't hurt me. Let's see. The Rio Grande. Let me type that in. The Rio Grande ski train. Maybe we can find a little bit more about it. Because the Winter Park Express is Amtrak's like version of that now. It's this one. And it only runs seasonally. I guess the ski train also did as well. But let's take a gander here at the Rio Grande ski train. Let's see here. I'm not gonna lie, that's a really cool concept, like a seasonal kind of a ski train thing. really cool. I wish we could read more about it. Unfortunately, I'll have to probably read about this off stream. And I promise you, you bet your sweet Bippy I'm going to be reading about this because I love trains. So you can guarantee I will find the time for this. But very interesting. I got to thank you for sharing that with us, Danny B, because it's really cool to hear that you worked on it. And it's also cool to know that it was run by the Denver and Rio Grande. When did it stop service? Let's see. Lead the ski train when this photo was taken.
Let's see. Danny said 1/4 mile long, and the last 3 car were private car.
Wow, that is crazy. A 1/4 mile long passenger train. That is nuts, actually. Like, that's insane. I wonder how the logistics on that must be insane because crew probably were all quartered like on one end of the train. So you had to walk all the way down a 1/4 mile train. That is insane. That's like getting almost to the length of like 1940s era freight trains, like with that kind of length. That is nuts. But that's still really cool, honestly. That's like whack. So apparently what is wild about this is that apparently the ski train actually ran apparently up until 2008 because it said the ski train, which I guess wasn't run by the Denver and Rio Grande by this point, had a year left, when this picture was taken on March 17th of 2007. So this actually ran up until 2008, which wasn't that long ago. But that is really wild, really cool to hear, Danny B. And I got to thank you for support and sharing with us a little bit of Colorado railroading history that isn't around anymore. But I guess the Winter Park Express is maybe the next nearest thing to it these days. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Person, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, John, for always supporting the channel and helping to keep it running. And John said, welcome back, Nightbot, and your vacation pics were amazing. Honestly, Nightbot is back, if I can speak English tonight. Nightbot came back for a small hiatus. It turned out they wanted us to sign a new contract with Nightbot. So he's now back. He has a new contract, a new agreement, and he's joined the channel once again. He's been rehired, and we're glad to have him back because he's doing hard work right now, as you can see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support because the Nightbot is back, and it's glad to be back. I gotta say, and we're happy to have it back too because it makes moderating a whole lot easier on us. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for helping this thing to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, also a longtime channel legend as well. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $20 support. They said, LSA, and I am back, and now no longer 5'7", but 4'2". Hugs and love Ukraine.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. Welcome back, Marion Deemer. We're happy to have you back, and we hope that you've been enjoying your time here tonight. And I got to thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping you keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't have a channel for you to come back to. And so, welcome back indeed. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that this addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Matt Schlegel, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Matt, for that support. I must say, wrap the cult of Matt proudly. Another Matt's in the chat. Listen, I listen to you guys every morning on my way to work, and I appreciate everything you do, and love Ukraine.
Now, we appreciate you for listening on your way to work, and we are happy to know that we are able to accompany hardworking folks that are getting on their way to their jobs in the morning, so that way y'all can make sure to have a bit of a more fun day, hopefully, or at least pass the time a little bit on the way to work well. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on air, so that way you continue to have something nice and good to listen to every morning. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we've got a super chat from Rick Galinchin once again, who puts in a 20 once more. And thank you very much, Rick, for the second support of the night. He said, the big rock you looked at in Squamish is the Stawamus Chief. It's the third highest straight face in North America.
Wow, that's really cool, actually. Let's go take a gander at that thing again. The rock. I was trying to look around for it here. Let's just go to Squamish and take a look at it again. That is really cool. I was actually going to say, before we moved on, it looked a lot like Yosemite, like one of the, like El Capitan or something like that, but smaller. But that is really cool, actually, and really pretty, honestly. Kind of neat to know that that's just hanging out right outside the town. And also, it looks like it's a part of a smaller mountain face further back. Well, a larger mountain face that's further back. But what a place. What a place. That's just crazy.
Was that a Sauron in that photo down there? Scroll down a little bit. Right there.
Right
there it was. Okay, click that. Yeah, like that's a Sauron. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, that is pretty neat. That's pretty cool. honestly, this little town looks really nice. Like, you know, one day I'd like to go up here and take a gander around this place. See if it really is as nice as the pictures make it out to be. I like how there's just industrial warehouses down there, though, in the middle of the picture, and that one looks abandoned down there.
Yeah, it looks like a really like old place.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, I say. Oh, look at this. You can actually see the little lumber mill thing down there where they're piling up the logs in the river. And actually, apparently, that actually is service. Like, that's a serviceable warehouse right there, because there's a vessel piered at it. That's, or moored at it, more so. That's interesting. I like this place, though. It's very pretty, and I want to go see it one day. Really, I'd like to travel all through this area of Canada. It's always been a place that our mom wanted to go to because it's a place of natural beauty. Like, look at that, dude. That's like what Windows screensavers are made of right there. Really beautiful. But still, huge thank you to you once again. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Purple Gerbil, the Purple Gerbil, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Mr. Gerbil, as always, for that support. They said, let's get this show on the road and LSA forever.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that support once more. They said, thoughts on doing an LSA March Madness bracket contest for fun, like sports or not. March Madness is fun. And LSA and Go Cats, BBN.
And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I'm not really sure about the logistics of that, but I will look into that and see if we can possibly do something like that. And so a huge thank you to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, Richard Philpott said in the chat, he said, I predict you guys will have a private jet one day. Honestly, I would never have a private jet, even if I could afford one day. Those are the biggest waste of money. Like, I think people buy those as tax write-offs or something to try to like lower their massive tax bills or something. But they're just a huge waste. Like the money, honestly, the cheapest part is buying the jet. Trying to maintain it is the hard part. But no, I mean, thank you for the kind words, by the way. Maybe one day we'll be in a private jet that we rent or something. But, you know, even at that, I'm fine with just flying in a commercial plane, to be perfectly honest. I'm not too much into the other stuff.
Well, I got to be honest with you on this, Matthew. If Putin was alive today, he wouldn't be a ride on no donkey.
Oh, praise the Lord.
Oh, praise it. But anyways, with that, yeah, I would never get a private jet. I honestly don't like private jets. One thing I would get, though, y'all are going to get this. This is predictable. Private rail car. Think of the possibilities. Matthew's like, oh, you idiot. Like, he's like, you don't do that. You really don't, unless you're a schmuck. And I'm a schmuck, so I get a private rail car. With that, dude, I'm going to be like Jay Leno. It's going to, instead of Jay Leno's garage, it's going to be Andrew's roundhouse. And it's just going to be private rail cars and locomotives. I mean, yeah, I pull them around the country. Isn't that crazy? I pay insane lease amounts to the railroads to go around like this. Isn't that wild? You know, it's going to be something like that.
Man, I'll tell you what, you just don't want to ever turn out to be like that Grant Cardone guy that goes around talking about, I got my Rolly, and talking about, I got my Gulfstream, and like showing off these massive planes and stuff. It's like, bro, it's like, why? It's like, you're wasting money. You're crazy. Come on now. It's like, what you doing? But, you know, you got to be flashy and stuff when you got to try to like sell stuff to people. You got to do that. You got to ride around with the G-Wagon. You got to have the Rolly. You have all that stuff.
Really quickly, before we move on, because some people are like, yeah, private rail car, hell yeah, because look, you could have one fitted out like this, right around in style, you know, like looking at like the Rockies, from the Rockies, you're not looking at it from a plane or anything, like that would be nice. Like some of them though are kind of a little ganked, like I'm not gonna lie, in these pictures, like this is like very 70s-esque. I'm not liking that. I would make mine look a little chic and clean, like this, like that looks like a yacht almost, like that's pretty nice. Or this. That's also pretty nice. Like those
I would probably buy a boat before I would ever buy a private train car. In fact, I would probably get the private jet if I ever got a private train car. And that's saying something, is I don't even want a private jet.
Dude, but look at that. Isn't that cool looking right there? You know, sitting that. And then you have a little bedroom and everything in there, like, you know, with a shower and all that. Like, it's like a house on wheels. And also, man, like you rode the train until we got close to Seattle, it was very smooth. Like, it was wildly smooth, like glass almost.
Yeah, I'd rather take a ship or take not a ship. I'd rather take a yacht out, like during the gale force winds or something, and do that instead.
Man, you're no fun, man. You're no fun at all. I'm just kidding. Like, I get it. This wouldn't be for everyone. But I got to tell you, man, it is nice looking. Like, I would give it a shot. But anyways,
It's like being in a cage. It's honestly like just a cage. You can't even really go anywhere you want to go. You just have to go right down the rail.
well, I mean, that's kind of like with cars, though, man. It's not like you go, I want to see something new and exciting. You just break out over like the country fields. You know, it's like you don't do that. Like, you have to stay on a road. It's almost the same thing.
Maybe. I see Adam Glegg saying in the live chat, the Lamborghini yacht. I was one of the first to acquire the beautiful Lamborghini yacht, said Conor McGregor. Yeah, honestly, the Lamborghini yacht, that's pretty cool, honestly. Way too overpriced. But it looks pretty sick. I like the engine on it. Like, I admire how large that engine is. It's obscenely large for a yacht. Have you seen the Lamborghini yacht, by the way?
I don't think I have. Let's see.
So it's made by the Italian Sea Group, but Lamborghini like put their branding on it or something.
This?
It's a pretty clean looking yacht. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty sick.
Dang, that is pretty clean looking. Look at that.
I don't know how
Wow.
much it is though, but it's probably obscene. Like, I think the cost was somewhere in the like tens of millions or something. I can't remember.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I wouldn't call this thing a yacht. Yeah, it kind of classifies as a yacht, but it's not like big. You know, it's not like a big
Oh,
yacht.
it's big. Like, it's pretty large.
Like, you know what I like are the classic yachts. Like these. Those are clean, man. Don't diss on it. It looks clean. Like, the lines are clean. It's a clean looking yacht. Like this. Actually, that one is rough. Certainly not that one. No, man, you're gonna get killed by Jaws on that one. But some of these do look pretty good. There was one, though, that I saw. It was very, very nice looking. I was like, wow, that's really cool. But I would never get a yacht. I think yachts and private jets are a waste of money, really.
And yachts. Did you say yachts?
No, yachts and
Oh.
private jets. Wastes of money. It's really just getting it for the exuberance of it, and that's pointless, really. Also, why in the world are there so many sailboats that keep on showing up in the classic yacht section?
You know, a boat that I would like to have, like a reasonably priced boat, is the one that can like capsize and ride itself again. That one, it's like hurricane proof. You can literally take it out in anything, you'll live. That's one I would actually like consider like actually wanting to have, is one like that.
You know, that wouldn't be a bad one to have. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. But honestly, though, man, I'll tell you this, man. Like, if I had to give like a rating list on forms of transport, train is number 1 for me. Plane is number 2. Ships are number 3. I just don't like the idea of being on the open sea on a ship, like, for an incredibly long period of time. I don't like, it's not really relaxing to me, because like the difference in between being on a ship for days and a train for days is that on the train you're seeing a lot. Like, you're seeing mountains, towns, fields, and a whole bunch of myriad of other things. And on a ship, all you're seeing is the open ocean. And the open ocean looks exactly the same everywhere. I know, because I've been on a cruise before, and I only had to go on a cruise once as a kid to know you can only look at the ocean for a couple of hours, and then it's the ocean, and that's it. You know, and then at that point, you're just looking for something to do on the ship itself. So, like, yachts are like the bottom tier thing for me for, like, transport. Like, oh, I get on my yacht and I go look at the water and sit on it. So you can go sit on a public beach for free and look at the water if you want to. Not only that, you get the sound of the waves. You don't get any of that on a yacht. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one while everyone answers the most interesting poll I've seen in a hot minute. So we are on to the next one.
All right. So moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Richard Hawkins, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Richard Hawkins, for that support once more. And always support the channel bigly. I've seen your name a lot for the super chats, and I appreciate that very much, that $20 support. He said, will Vlad still be alive a year from now? He doomed Russia with his response today.
Good question. We'll have to see. Those kinds of things are unpredictable. Sometimes people just get capped and that's that, or they get poisoned. It's really hard to say whether that would happen or not. Usually, though, dictators survive a pretty long time, way longer than they ever should. So he might end up being well, alive, and healthy here from a year from now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Mamba Mentality, the mentality of a Mamba, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, to my fellow Americans, if you think this situation doesn't have anything to do with us, yes, it has. Let's see, help Ukraine or we ourselves have to deal with Russia, boots on the ground. This is pissing me off. Come on, man.
Come on, Jack. But I would agree. The United States has to rally behind Ukraine and support it because it's not only within their interest, it's within our interest, and it's within Europe's interest. It's within the collective West's interests. And for that reason, I believe that people should support it. And so with that, thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let's address the poll. Which one would you like to have if you had no money limits? If you have like an infinite money glitch on GTA 5? 36% said Lamborghini yacht. 33% said Gulfstream jet. 12% said a Bugatti Bolide, and 19% said private train car. Honestly, between them all, I would have this Bugatti Bolide. I'm just saying, this thing is sick as hell right here. It's got like a W16 engine. This thing just came out, by the way. The thing is so race car performance oriented. You can't even turn the thing on without it being on a racetrack and going fast because it'll overheat. That's how like extreme this thing is. It is fast, and also from the back, it looks like the Batmobile. Like if you look at a rear picture of it, look at that.
Cool.
Like that is cool. Sick. That is so sick. I don't know how much this costs. It's 3.5 million pounds. So it's outrageously expensive for the ultra rich, but this thing looks clean. If I could just drive it once, I'd be happy. That'd be good enough for me for life. But I love this thing. Honestly, between this one, if we're talking about race cars, or a Pagani Huayra R, it would be a close call, like between those two.
I don't know how to spell the Huayra thing. Like
it's a Pagani. You know how to spell that. Huayra R.
And then let me put in the R. Ooh, that is cool looking.
This thing here is all carbon fiber. It's got a Mercedes AMG engine in it. It's funnily enough, it's a Pagani car, but it's got an AMG engine. And it sounds so good. So V12 is one of the best sounding motors you'll ever hear in a vehicle ever. This thing's only a track car, and it's fast. It's very fast. And they're extremely expensive because they're like completely made of carbon fiber. But this thing looks clean right here. It's so nice.
I'm not gonna lie, man, this is a very beautiful looking car. Like, the lines from the side are very clean. Honestly, man, I've always been like, I don't like modern cars. I do like these, though. These are very clean looking.
You know, the Horatio Pagani, who's the founder of Pagani, he worked at Lamborghini before he either got fired or quit from Lamborghini because they weren't listening to his design propositions, and he got pissed off about it. I think they might have fired him, actually, if that's just the way the story goes. He went and started Pagani, which was going to be a competitor to Lamborghini. But it turned out that he wanted to make all of his cars out of carbon fiber, which has never really been done before. They were one of the first to do it. So they got these massive like autoclaves so they can actually make the carbon fiber fit to the shell of the body. And that's why you'll see this, the only car in production that has carbon fiber on the exterior shell like that is going to be Pagani's. And they're super lightweight because of it. And also, they focused mainly on the design. Like, if you look at the interior of the Pagani's, any of their cars, they're always really retro looking. Like, they really use analog parts on the inside of them. If you punch in, like, the interior pictures, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's, like, really old school on the inside, which is weird for a car this expensive. Yeah, take a look at that one. There you go. It's, like, all the buttons and stuff in it. It's all made of metal. They have, like, an open exposed gear shifter and stuff like that.
I really like that.
Just super cool. Yeah, like, and also the dashboard, too. Really retro, like, the whole thing.
Yeah, I really like this, man. Like, this is my kind of style for an interior. Like, everything's all metal buttons, analog. They actually have the speed gauges, like physical speed gauges instead of digital ones. Like, that feels classy to me. Like, you know, like wow, it's all computer. Like, I don't like that in, like, modern cars. It feels cheap, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I actually like this. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, modern looking cars, but, like, first of all, I'll never be able to afford a Pagani because, like, the people that buy Paganis are like billionaires. Like, they're crazy expensive. But just like from a piece of art perspective, those things are clean. Honestly, I'll say this about Rolls Royce real quick. They've lost their way. This new Spectre thing right here, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
I think it's a hybrid or something. Whatever it is, like, they're starting to make their Rolls Royces look like they're like production cars or something. That was not the intent of Rolls Royce the whole time. It was supposed to be like an exclusive car or something. This thing does not look right. And also, Ferrari's losing their way too. Like, I don't know what's going on Ferrari, but they're making these hybrid things and they're taking away the V12s and they don't look good either.
I'll be honest with you, man. Like, Rolls-Royce has been losing its way for a little bit. Like, honestly.
Well, if you pull up like the Phantom, like the Phantom still looks generally like the old style. And the Ghost is the Phantom's really the one that everybody knows. This is like the big bulky one right here, the massive one.
I like these. I think these look good. And, like, these are chauffeur cars. Like that's what they're designed to be. And I like that. Like, I think that's a really good kind of an idea. But I don't really like most modern car designs. Like I'll be honest with y'all, I don't really like Lamborghini that much. Like, Lamborghini has just kind of gotten mid. Like, when you have things like Paganis and stuff out there, these just don't look that great anymore. Like, you can get a Corvette these days that kind of looks like that, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, if you're talking, and now this is out of my price league, so I don't even understand the thinking behind it. But Lamborghinis are cheap, and that sounds weird to say that, but they're cheap in comparison to like the other hypercars. Like if you're talking about a Pagani is going to be in the like $2 million range, which is insane. This Lamborghini Revuelto right here is going to be about 700,000. So it's like a fraction of the cost of a Pagani. But these new Revueltos right here, if that's how you say it, they're not very clean looking. The Huracan is like the really like populated Lamborghini that most people like have if they have one. That new Urus thing, that SUV that Lamborghini came out with, which is right there, by the way, that thing is an Audi Q8 with a Lamborghini badge on it and a new engine. That's basically what that is. You recognize like the body style from it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, it's the Audi group that owns Lamborghini, I believe. So it looks just like a Q8 and it's just got a new engine. But yeah, like honestly, Lamborghini is just not really my thing. Like the older Ferraris, like the 488 GTB, those are pretty cool. But the new ones, I'm not a fan of. The Ferrari F40, yeah, I don't like that. That's the F80. That's the successor to the F line of Ferrari. The F40 is the cleanest one, like that really old Ferrari. Like pull that one up real quick. The Ferrari F40, that is just a goated Ferrari right there. Look at that. That thing's got turbos on it. It had such a clean sound too.
What's that Alta Rosa thing? You know what I'm talking about?
Testarossa?
Yeah, the Testarossa. There we go. Sorry. Testarossa. No, not these. Not these. It was older than this. It was like this one.
Are you talking about like a Dino?
I think so. Like these are cool. Like I think these are neat.
Yeah, that's they're okay. They're okay.
Dude, you always diss on the older cars, man. Like, look at that. It's cool looking, man. It looks like an older, like, retro, well, it is retro, racing car. I like them.
It's all right.
What is your opinion count for anyway? It's like, what?
Also, by the way, someone mentioned, Matt, do you like Koenigsegg's? I personally don't. Like, I like the transmission idea they had. Like, it's like some type of like variable speed transmission. It has one gear on it, but the like gear ratio expands as the car speeds up. So you stay in one gear the whole time. That's my understanding of it. I just don't like it. Like, it's such a specialty car. I just don't really care for it. They look pretty clean. Like, if you punch in Koenigsegg, like their new one, like I think it's called the Gemera. It looks good, but I wouldn't like really want to have one if I could afford it. It just doesn't look really appealing for some reason. There it is. Yeah, I just don't like that.
It looks like a Beetle. You know, like not a Volkswagen Beetle. It looks like the Beetle Bug.
This one doesn't even have a differential. So they've made the transmission a one speed and they've taken the diff away. So that's kind of interesting. I think that's what the appeal of Koenigsegg is the weird like powertrain they have, but I don't find that very like interesting, to be honest with you. It's like I'd rather just have like normal gearing, like 6-speed or something, instead of like one gear. Like it's like an electric car, but it's gas powered.
Yeah, that's a little whack. I wouldn't like that either. It's like, what's the point then? It's like isn't the point of getting one of these cars is to have like the stick shift or the paddle shift, and have like that performance feel, and then you have like one transmission gear and that's it.
Yeah, it's really funky. Like I remember watching a Top Gear episode about it one time. They were trying to explain it. I'm probably butchering the explanation of it, but it's just like it's really quirky. Like I just don't like it. Somebody said like a CVT. I think that might be the closest thing to it, but this is like a way more high-end CVT transmission. But yeah, I just don't like it.
Yeah, I don't know about this one. What's another interesting car? One more. Let's see here. Has anyone got an interesting one?
Let's see. Interesting in what way?
Just an interesting car to look at. It could be modern, old, anything.
Let's see. Let me think. There's Lotus. A Lotus like let's see. What's that new one? Lotus Emira. It's like the little mini Ferrari, but it's a Lotus.
And how do you spell that? Emira. Oh, here we go. Emira.
Yeah, these things right here. This is like a mini Ferrari, like the British Ferrari or something like that. It's got a Toyota Camry engine, That's the engine it has, but they threw a turbocharger on it, or a supercharger, I think. And now it makes more horsepower. It sounds really good. Like, this thing sounds good. I had no idea a Toyota engine could sound that good in a Lotus, but these things sound clean. Also, the handling is really good. It's got a really cool 6-speed transmission in it. But the styling on it is like way above its league. Like, this thing is not very fast, to be honest. It's really good at cornering, but it's not fast. But I like the look of it.
You know, man, you know what it kind of makes me feel like? It's like a Porsche Ferrari. It's like a mix in between Porsche and Ferrari with the design.
Yeah, well, it's got the price tag of a Porsche on it. It's like 100-something thousand, like I think 110,000 for this thing, which is way overpriced, by the way. Like, you're paying for the Lotus name because the engine is a Toyota. Like, that, you got to keep that in mind. It's a Toyota engine, but you're paying over 100K for it, which is crazy. If you want that, just go for a Porsche.
Go for the Lotus Mark 1.
Oh, man, what the hell?
Man, I remember this because they were like, he built it in his garage, and then he wanted to sell it, so someone bought it off of him for, I think it was like £2,000, like, after World War II, which is mental, like, the cost of that at the time. But then he got into making cars. That was the first Lotus ever made. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, it's not a looker. That thing's pretty ugly. Like, even by my standards, which are old, that's pretty ugly. But I do like this one.
Yeah. I will say this: Lotus has a hell of a race history, by the way. Like, they've been known for winning races, but their like commercial cars or their consumer cars, it's just always been a hit or miss. Like, the reliability hasn't really been there. Like, with the old Evoras and stuff like that, the Evoras were cool, and all the old like Elise, all the old Lotuses were cool, but everybody always said they were like known for trouble. I think Top Gear called it "lots of trouble, usually serious," is what Lotus stands for.
Huh. That's probably fairly true. I don't know a lot about the history of Lotus, but I have seen some of their older racing cars like these, and I've always been like, wow, that's cool. Because they look like little tubes, little cylinders, with exposed tire. Well, that's exactly what it is. And I was like, that was just a very cool look. And then there's this, which is pretty much just a Caterham, you know, like in the modern day, like the kit car.
Oh yeah. This is honestly, that looks like a Caterham. It's also called the 7. What I don't know if Caterham bought out that vehicle, but that's literally the exact same design and the name and everything.
Yeah, I remember we saw a couple of those Caterhams over in Britain. They were always cool looking, mind you. They always looked neat moving, driving around out there on the roads. But I've never really seen any of these in America. Wish we did though, because they're pretty neat.
Also, you want to know a car that had a fall from grace, or a car company that had a fall from grace?
Which
Punch in the new Jaguar.
Ew.
Jaguar's had a long history, by the way, like as a British brand. Look at this new thing. Look at that. Look at that. That is freaking horrible. I mean, you're literally looking at the death of a car company right in front of your eyes with this thing. Like, nobody's going to buy that.
Man, and the company that owns Jaguar is called Tata. You can't even make it up. It's just Breasts. Breasts owns Jaguar, and they're turning it into something terrible. This is ugly. Look at that. Ew. Dude, there's nothing appealing about that design. It's like a soapbox car.
This is why you should not sell like legacy car companies like Jaguar that's been like historically British. It was started in Britain. You don't sell it to a foreign company like that. They're going to ruin it because they don't understand what the idea behind it was. The Jaguar sales were not doing great, but they shouldn't have sold off to a foreign company like that. They run the whole thing.
This is the worst. I'm not even kidding. This is the worst. It actually beats out the Cybertruck by miles. It is terrible. Like, this is the honest worst car I've ever seen. Like, no joke.
It's like they're trying to destroy Jaguar. It's like the foreign company bought Jaguar and they're trying to just wreck the whole brand or something.
It's terrible. Also, MDM said, looks like a Tesla. This looks far worse than a Tesla. Like, this is horrific. Like, the Cybertruck, albeit stupid, which everyone can agree, it's stupid. It has, it's not incredibly bad. It just looks dorky. But this just looks horrendous. Like, this is terrible. I've never seen anything like it before. And, and it's coming.
Someone said the pimp mobile. Honestly. And look at this, the F-Type. You saw that F-Type you just clicked on right there? That was one of the last, sports cars they designed from the ground up. It had a really nice sounding V8 in it. It looked cool, but they didn't sell very well. That was the problem. Because a lot of people, for the price, just went with something else, like a BMW or like a Porsche or something. But this was actually good. Like, the design was good. It sounded great and everything. It was a good car. But they went from that to this new thing. It's like, what the hell? It's not even like a close competition.
This is a way to kill a company right here. No one's going to buy this thing.
Yeah, nobody's buying that. Jaguar is going to be finished if they don't like get back with it.
Dude, I think the only person who's going to buy it is going to be Jay Leno, so that way he can claim that he bought the last Jaguar ever made. Like, I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But let's see. The Plymouth, what is that? This Plymouth Superbird, isn't it? Yeah, this one. These were pretty neat. Like not because of the whole cars thing, but because they just look kind of cool.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. I'm just not a huge fan of too many old American cars. Like, there's a couple of cool ones, like the Corvette, but meh.
Yeah, that's not that bad. I mean, that's pretty unique with that giant fin on it and everything.
Yeah. I mean, not too bad.
I will admit, though, this is certainly not my favorite. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to find one of these things, but it is cool.
It's just that the American car companies went wrong because they made cars that were big rumbling V8s. They could go really good in a fast line. They could burn rubber off the tires, but they weren't very good at handling. Like, if you try to go and handle this thing like a European car, you're going to find yourself in trouble real quick, because they're good for straight line speed, but not good for cornering.
Man, but check out these Packards. Look at this.
That's actually clean. I like that. It's just got the mob thing going on.
Yeah, Packard's motto for most of their company history, or their slogan, was Packard is Packard good? Ask a guy that owns one, because like their reputation of their cars was that good. They never did any marketing, so people would just be like, oh, Packards are so great, but they had a terrible fall from grace in the 50s and the 60s, and they went out of business in the late 60s, I believe. Actually, I think it was the late 50s, and now their plant in Detroit's completely abandoned, and I think they're demolishing it right now. Really sad fall from grace for a company that was really, it actually was a competitor to Cadillac the entire time it existed, because it usually made real luxury cars. Like this 49 Packard, not great designs at this point. You can start to see why the company started to slip in relevance, but they still were pretty good. I mean, you look at that, it's that's pretty quintessential 50s pretty much already, and it's just the late 40s.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it's an interesting design.
Yeah, but honestly, man, nothing can beat the 1929 Packards. Those were really cool looking.
Those were pretty cool, I will say.
But with that,
I think I like American car companies, not necessarily for the older cars they made, but I like them just for the story behind the company. I think like the Dodge brothers starting Dodge and things like that. That's very fascinating. Also, Ford, a very fascinating individual for back in the day with the things he was saying, but how Ford became the company it did. Forget the guy and what he said. Just put that aside for a second. But Ford became a freaking powerhouse. They're everywhere across the world. Huge in Britain, huge in America, obviously, as they started here, but just a massive company. The American car companies, I will say, have as storied of a history as the European car companies. I just don't like the design so much of the American companies of the old cars.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with all of y'all. I really don't find a lot of car designs really from any era to be that striking or that good. And honestly, American cars are a lot more slim pickings than European ones to find ones that you go, oh, look, that's cool. But still beyond that, I really do like American car companies for the story of the company. Like Matthew's saying, because it's always cool to hear how it was a struggle and a battle to survive. But really, that's for every company in the world. The stories of how they were created and grew were pretty cool. Also, you don't want to ask what the Ford Motor Company was doing in Germany in World War II. You certainly don't want to ask about that, because they weren't exactly doing the greatest of things. The Opel Blitz. Opel was I think the subdivision of Ford in Germany, and they whipped these things out like there was no tomorrow. They were making Opel Blitzes until the sun went down, and even after.
That was something that was used for the military.
Yeah, this was actually used by the Wehrmacht of the German army in World War II, and in large numbers. This was their main transport truck, kind of like the Studebaker was for the United States. And speaking of Studebaker, now that's a company that nobody talks about because it also went down, but for good reason.
Oh yeah, that's tough, in a bad way.
Dude, this thing looks like it's gonna get kill me. It's like I will. It's that thing's bad. That thing's terrible. Yeah.
Also, by the way, I just saw a message come across here. Jay Bagwell told us to check out a vehicle.
Really?
Check this one out. It's called the Ineos Grenadier. I've seen it. I've seen one in Birmingham, by the way. There's one that's here.
Oh, wow.
This is the modern day take on a old school Land Rover Defender. And Land Rover Defenders are really cool, but of this like body style right here, the old school Defenders are expensive as hell. Like that market has become like a collector's market, and you really can't get them in America anymore unless they're like really, really expensive. So this new Ineos Grenadier is supposed to be like the modern new style of it. Obviously not a Land Rover, so you don't have the authenticity of it, but it looks pretty close. It's got like a snorkel on it. It's got the really high like clearance of the ground, so you can go over rocks and terrain and stuff like that. And it just looks pretty sick. I will say it's pretty cool. I just don't know much about the company, honestly. Like I've never really I don't know if is this Ineos's first vehicle they've ever made?
I don't really know a lot about Ineos, so I'm not entirely sure, but it is a very cool looking vehicle. I will give it that. I really like this.
Yeah, I like it. I've seen one around Birmingham here. It looked pretty cool. I was like, wait a minute, is that a Defender? But it's like, no, it's not a Defender. It's like some new one that's made here.
You know, man, I honestly would like to get one of these. I'm sure they're very expensive because everything is expensive these days. But
No, they're not that bad actually. I think they start around the 50s range or something.
real?
I mean, it's really basic though. I mean, it's not like you're getting like some high end vehicle for it. It's like I think the closest thing to compare it to would be like a Toyota or something, like a 4Runner, but it's just in this body style.
Still really cool. Like I really like it.
Yeah, and honestly, like I will say this, that's really not cheap for this. Like it's really honestly kind of expensive, really, because like I said, you're not really buying like a super like high end vehicle. It's just like a really tough off roader.
It is still neat. But on that note, Matthew, I think we have loads more super chats, and we are going well over time at this point. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Rob Wilkes, who puts in a 10 and said, "You talk too much." Oh, thank you, Rob, for that. He said, "What I mean is that you are far too wordy. And not only do you use 20 words when 10 will do, you often misuse words. Please watch the old Walter Cronkite broadcast. Not one wasted word." Oh, I dare you, sir. Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I thank you for the support, but we are who we are. Like, if it takes us 30 words to do it in 10, that's what we do. You know, like I really don't know how to put that any more politely than that. But I do. I do think.
Oh man, you coming in with the low blows. Honestly, like he took me right back down to reality. I was talking about the car talk. I was getting lost in that, getting excited about it, and then what? Low blow. You talk too much. Like, okay, damn. Thank you.
It's like it was a talk show. It's like I would hate that we weren't talking a lot because our show might be over a little too quick. But anyways, with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Eric, as well, for that support. He said, "Can I get a screw Putin" in the chat? And glad to see Nightbot made it back and get you guys a coffee and LSA.
Hey, we are going to make sure to get ourselves a coffee. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. Also, by the way, before we move on into that live chat, I just remembered, Matthew, that Walter Cronkite had a script that he was reading. He was literally reading off of papers in front of him. So I don't know why we're going to get heat like that, because it's not exactly like we have script writers. It just hit me on that one. So that's kind of like a critique. Like we should be able to write a script on air while we're talking, coming up with everything, because we don't have a staff. So we're doing this all on our own. Like, I didn't think about that right there, but honestly, that's an incredibly unfair critique, because unless if you want to personally give us a couple of $1 million so that way we can go hire a whole staff and have a media conglomerate, then we're kind of doing the best we can here. It just hit me on that one. But with that, we will make sure to get that live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Shalmenizer, who says, "Will Russia mobilize?"
Maybe so. I'm not entirely sure on that one. They've been trying to hold off mobilization, and Putin has sworn to the public that he wouldn't. But they might try and find some way to justify that there's been a change that was unpredicted, so that way they could begin a mobilization. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Gisla Minar, who puts in a $12 donation. And thank you very much, Gisla, for that support. And they said a very good comment here. I like this once again. They said, "Who doesn't love a Nissan GTR?" Honestly, like Nissan GTRs are goated. They're legendary as well. Then very, very nice V6 engine in those vehicles right there. And a launch control that will absolutely knock somebody out. Like that's a launch control that's hard to match. And also the sound of those GTR engines is just like top notch too. The only problem is I think Nissan actually discontinued the GTR. I think this year or last year, something like that. But GTRs, like, they never lose value. Like, I've never seen a GTR that's actually like really affordable. Even old ones go for good money. Like, I'm talking about near 100 grand for GTRs, but they are very clean. Like, I'm not gonna lie, those are very nice. I like the old ones and the new ones. That's one car that's like never really aged, has been the GTR. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel keep it running, but I personally don't know a lot about cars. And damn, he yaps so much. 40 words when he could have said it in 10. Car good. I like car. But with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Nightmare Before Christmas, for that support. They said, I see Putin testing Europe by attacking us to cause a proxy war with Russian troops in Belarus gear, and then Belarus has no option but to fight, probably into Lithuania, and he's desperate now and cornered in LSA.
And maybe so. That might be something that happens. But I believe that he can get the Belarusians to operate on their own just by the Russians requesting them to do so. And the Russians will be there for them because they're all a part of a defensive pact, just like NATO is in. So I think that they'll probably maybe just ask them to do it, and they'll do it. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I can't help it. Rick Galinchin said the new Corvette ZR1 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. I know, I saw that. That's insane. Like, honestly, the new like C8 model of Corvette is the new mid-engine Corvette. If most people don't know that, compared to the old one, which is front engine. I kind of like it and kind of don't. But the ZR1 version of it, that looks clean. And that new like ZR1 engine, it sounds like the American version of a Ferrari. Like, pull that up real quick and force. So like the Corvette ZR1, just real quick. It's literally like Chevrolet's done a really good job making it like a European car almost. It's a really good take on it. Like, let's see here. There it is right there. Honestly, that's clean right there. That one looks good. And the engine and the transmission on that thing is insane. And it has to be to get 2.3 seconds 0 to 60 like that. It just sounds so good. Like, I wish we could pull up a video and hear the sound of it. It sounds excellent.
But for copyright reasons, we probably can't. like sadly, if someone be like, "Hey, that's my video," and then get us with a copyright strike. So, sadly, we wouldn't be able to do that. But it is one hell of a fine-looking car. There's a decent amount of them here in Birmingham, and like we see them, and we're always like, "Oh, look at that!" Like, they really did an impressive job. One of the few times in the modern era that I've seen a car get a new body style, and then I went, "Wow, that's a real upgrade," instead of going, "Ew, what the hell's that?" Like, that's usually what happens these days. But very nice. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. And Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
We have about 20.
All right, we're going to have to make sure to cut the car talk a little short along with the train talk and start knocking these things out. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Bad POG, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support. They said Putin went to Kursk like a canary to a coal mine. Soviet logic will endure millions of casualties before civilians feel it, aside from widows. Dead men tell no tales, and Machiavellianism in a nutshell.
And I'd have to agree. Really so. Putin the canary. But beyond that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Siri, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Siri, for that support. They said, send all these men to Mars. And thanks for the great work in Force Bros. And illegitimate non-carborundum. XO from Oslo.
And thank you so much for the support, Siri, and helping this channel to keep on running. Always happy to know that we have a Norwegian viewer from Oslo here. And I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it was folks like you who make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Big Daddy J, also known as DC Audio FTW, who puts in the 10. They said they played right into the U.S. plan. And now that Putin said that no, U.S. plan will send so much stuff to Ukraine, will win not just to survive and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, Slava Ukraine, you're home, Slava. And I'd say that your assessment is fairly true. I think the United States might go hardball on this, but you never know. We'll have to wake up tomorrow and take it day by day and hour by hour. But still, a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Adam, as well. He said, please, please, just look at the new Lotus EV. Oh.
The Lotus EV, we will take a look at it, but we're going to have to make this short. We're just going to have to look at it and move on. So, let's see here. Lotus EV. Matthew can yap on cars like I yap on trains. It's like, it starts and it starts, like, just like me.
That's the SUV, but the car is over there to the right side of it. Lotus is trying to go all electric, by the way. I'll just keep it short. They're trying to go all electric. They're trying to get rid of their gas-powered cars, which is a huge mistake, but they're going to try to do that anyway. But it looks okay.
It looks pretty good. It kind of looks like a Corvette, honestly. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running. I hope that does address it well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wantan, a triple or quadruple eight, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Wantan, for that support. They said, hello, my fellow peeps. And can we call this the official Buy a Car segment in honor of the Bayraktar song? And love Ukraine.
Hey, I guess we can. Tonight was a really big rabbit hole on cars. Honestly, I don't heavily dislike cars. I actually find them fascinating to look at from time to time. So tonight was actually a pretty cool and fun night. It's just that we got really carried away and now we've lost a lot of time. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
I'm just giving the enforcer a taste of what it feels like to hear the train talk. Just the taste.
Honestly,
just the taste.
Honestly, man, I find it interesting. Like, I look at them for their color and their shape, and I'm like, oh, that's neat or not. You know, like, that's how I look at cars. Technical side of things, I have no clue about. But just the physical appearance of them, I find it really interesting.
Yeah, I really can't work on cars that well. I've tried working on them before. I can do it, but it's just obnoxious as hell. But I like talking the technical bits of cars that don't involve me having to actually put the wrench on it. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Butchie777, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. They said, for the yapping fun, I love you guys, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting the yapping fun, Butchie777, in response to someone saying, you talk too loud, too much. It's like, well, it's a show, you know, it's like, but beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bob Anon, who puts in an 8. And thank you very much, Bob, for the support as well. He said, watching Putin's video, it feels like he doesn't fully understand the situation, and could he have cognitive issues, but people are too scared to tell him?
It's not out of the question. I mean, he's pretty old. You know, he's getting on up towards being a geezer. So it might be possible, but I have a feeling that he's probably well within control of his mental faculties. Kind of like our president right now. Like, I have a feeling he's well within his control of his mental faculties. It's just that he doesn't really have an understanding of much things. And so he states a lot of things in ignorance. And for that reason, a lot of people think that he may be senile, but I think it's just largely from ignorance more so than anything on most topics. But with Putin, I think that it's more so just that he has grand ambitions and not really a country that can achieve any of those ambitions. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Mamba Mentality once again, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Mr. Mamba, for that support. And they said, let's see here. They said basically to say to the U.S. leadership, Russia will never be our friends. And that's the end of the story.
I would largely agree. The Russians are always going to be an enemy of the United States. It's just how it chalked up to be. And we really can't do much to change that because they're always going to look at us that way. And so thank you once again. Hope that is addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Iverson Tucker, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Iverson, for that support. They said, I feel like Bayraktar could be replaced by another classical tune of some sort. Put the LSA anthem first, and I think it fits the channel better. And LLT, LSA.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The intro is the intro. You know what I mean? Like, it's good. I have to agree. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octavian Timarasanu, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Octavian, as well, for that support once more. He said, basically, the Ukrainians have to send a lot more Russians into the afterlife for Russia to get the message.
It's pretty much that's the case. So we just kind of have to keep supporting the Ukrainians and keep spirits high until we eventually reach Russia's breaking point. Who knows when that will be. But still, thank you once again. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Donald Kaus, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Donald, as well, for that support. He said, don't listen to our leaders, both sides. It changes, LOL. And hopefully things go good just to have, unfortunately, wait. Putin on the Ritz.
And thank you for the support. And over the channel to keep on running. We have to listen to them because if we don't have news to cover. So we have to listen to them and take their statements at face value. But I do thank you once again for the support and making this thing possible. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Donald Kaus once again, who puts in a 5. Hey, thank you very much, Donald, for that support. He said, for Enforcer Matt's raise fund, smiley face. I like that. Thank you very much, Donald Kaus, for the raise fund. Maybe I'll get 2 blocks of cheese this week. But thank you very much, Donald. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support. And hopefully we will be able to see that Matthew finally makes it out of the squalor of his miserable, wagey existence. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to give it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ryguy SR once again, who puts in a 5 this time. Thank you very much, Ryguy SR, for that support. They said Nightbot Fund, and we can't have him just not showing up again. LSA, God bless the USA, and love Ukraine.
We have to make sure that this does not happen again. Bailiff, whack the Nightbot.
But beyond that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep Nightbot around. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hatchet Quadruple Zero, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Hatchet, for that $5 support. And we appreciate it very much. And we also had another 5 from Donald Kaus. He said, oh man, I need a hot dog. In question from the chat.
Aw, man, where is my desk and a chair and a trip to DC? Aw, man.
But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question goes to Ambi Pambi, who says, how does this situation make the U.S. president look like a fool? And in short, it's basically because Putin called him a liar, because the U.S. president was trying to say that Putin wanted peace. He wanted peace the whole time, and Ukraine was simply being difficult to work with. And now that Putin came out and rejected the ceasefire, which was just a 30-day lapse in the fighting, that makes it very obvious that Putin's the one that doesn't want peace. So that makes the president thus look like a liar. Whether or not he actually lied or not, that's up to you. But it makes him look that way in the public. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to completely agree with Matthew on that one. I hope that does address that well. And so with that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Donald Kaus once more. He puts in a 5. He said 5 more, just to hear you say Putin on the Ritz again.
Putin on the Ritz, Putin on the Ritz, and Putin on the Ritz. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from Kim Ott. And Kim said, will Putin ever be held as a war criminal?
Most likely not, in my opinion. He is a war criminal, but he'll most likely never be held by anyone as one. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Andrew Goods, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that support. He said, apparently to Fox News, Mike Waltz confirmed that Russia would get the Donbass area and any peace settlement, and that's crazy. They shouldn't get that at all. I wouldn't put any stock in it, to be honest with you. But that's just me. But Enforcer, what's you?
I wouldn't put any stock into anything at this point, because if it goes the way we're thinking, we're probably going to say that the Russians are owed no land in Ukraine and they have to get out. So that might be how it ends up. Or it might be that it ends up that it's still largely what we've already seen in the past, which is that the Russians will keep some land, but the Ukrainians will get some back as well to try and make it more fair to both sides, although it's just really unfair that the Ukrainians are losing any land at all, because legally all of it's theirs. Well, technically all of it's theirs. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Philip Fixes LSA, who puts in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Philip, for that support. He said, let's see, apolitically speaking, let's see here. Basically, the people that currently follow a political line of thinking when it comes to geopolitics will flip the script when their guy decides to support Ukraine. And I know very smart people who have become flip-floppers. Very sad.
It's very sad. Honestly, though, I always see people who are just extremely political to an nth degree. So, like, for example, we'll take the current president because he's in charge. With Trump, some people act like Trump is perfect and he can't do anything wrong. And people who say that he is doing something wrong are the enemy and must be executed as criminals of the state. And then there's also people who act like Trump is the devil incarnate and that he deserves to be impeached, put in prison, and then have the key thrown under it. You know, for any minor thing. Like, it could be that he got 2 ice cream scoops and everyone else got 1, you know, impeachable offense. And it's just really crazy how that works, because it's not really one or the other. It's more so of a blend, you know, like actually treating it with logic and values and consistency. There are things that are good and things that are not good. And from our perspective, sometimes he does things that are good, like today, for example, like we're already seeing that sanctions are being rolled out. I found that to be pretty good. I'll be honest, if like the yapping, like so far it's just yapping, but the yapping that's going on against Iran, I'm fairly a big fan of it. I like it. Hopefully we see that it's followed up with action, because if it isn't followed up with action, then he's just yapping and we're not really seeing any tangible results. And as long as we stand with Taiwan, I mean, hell, he at this point, especially if he goes anti-Russian, he's hitting all 3 bases. And if he's doing it aggressively and passively enough, depending on the scenario, hell, I mean, like, he's not doing that bad at that point. But with the foreign policy stuff he was saying over the past few weeks, I mean, like, I was actually getting stressed out off air and was losing some sleep over it, because I was like, damn, we're about to give up everything in Europe over this. I was like, that's crazy. You know, and also on the tariffs, those are not incredibly good either, and I think that they're detrimental to the United States. And once again, the Dow Jones, or really any stock market, is showing that right now. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. But we're not flip-floppers. We have a very consistent set of ideas and beliefs, and they either fall within that framework where it is a good thing, or they don't, and it's a bad thing. So with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Aussie Dave, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Aussie Dave, for that support. They said, I remember the skipper from Gilligan's Island played Casey Jones in the TV series of Casey Jones on Aussie TV.
Yeah, he did actually. There was a Casey Jones, a black and white, kind of a episodical series that was made. I watched it. I wasn't a fan of it because it was like a spaghetti western on trains, and I was like, I didn't like that. Like, it's just trains. Like, you know, I'm kind of like that. Like, it's just trains, all right? Don't focus on the cowboy side of things, like shooting out of the windows of the mail car or something, you know? Although that did happen back in the day. Like conductors were like strapped. Like, if you came up trying to rob a train in the later era of the Wild West, you just got shot. Like, they just shoot you and keep the train rolling. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. We are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hoodoo Texas once again, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Hoodoo, for that second support of the night. He said, tomorrow's Pie Day. Do you have your pie? Yes, we did. We had a piece of pie tonight, actually.
Yeah, we actually had a chocolate pie. It was very good. And so with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Blazant, who put in a 2, along with Morgan Chatsworth, who put in a 2 as well, along with Jake and Dubstep Kid 801, who each put in $2 donations. And thank you all very much for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 2 from Bad POG once again, who said, Fox News said that 20% of Ukraine is 7 states large.
7 state. Well, what are they measuring? Connecticut or something? It's like Ukraine is, I think, the size of Montana. So what 7 states are they measuring? Also, it's like a state isn't even a consistent form of measurement because you have Rhode Island, which is a state, and then you also have Alaska, which is a state. So it's like, what state are we talking? What 7 states is that? You know, it's like, what? Like, that isn't even a good measure of land. Like, Fox News in there.
Fox News, you're gonna start measuring in hectares next.
Man. Fox News is going to start measuring it in medieval cubits soon. Like, they're going to be like, it is 7 cubits. It's like, what the hell is that? I don't even know. But
Ukraine is a 5,000 whoppers large.
Dude, if you put a Ukraine in Ukraine, it would be about the size of Ukraine. Like, that's going to be Fox News next. And then you're going to have that guy come on. He's going to be like, wow, talk about Ukraine. I guess you could say that you reign. And then everyone's going to go, can someone fire this guy finally? Like, please. Like, we're tired of fake laughing at his dumb jokes. But anyways.
And also the main guy on the 5 is going to be like, can you come in and fix my toupee while he yaps this bad joke?
And then everyone goes, hey, where's Dan Bungie? Oh, never mind. He's off running a new comedy. It's called The FBI. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
So with that, folks, we're now jumping into our live chat questions proper because we are fresh out of Super Chats. And once again, huge shout out to everybody tonight for supporting the channel once again. And of course, being the reason it is able to keep going. But we are now jumping into our Morse code decoders of the night. Tonight, we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsap, Heroic Fluffiness, Airbell Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said, the Morse for the night says, the Russians have been put into the corner now with their answer to the ceasefire. LLT LOC.
And that's a ton of money. I'll get it in on the nail. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 1,114th day of the war, because you continue to get that correct time and time again. And so a big congratulations to y'all, a massive congratulations to y'all. And with that, we are running significantly overtime. We are almost a 4-hour-long stream at this point. Holy moly! And we got to make sure to get through it as quickly as we can, because we have to eat, sleep, and get ready for the next day, and get ready for the next hard day of work here on this channel. And so with that, we are going to be answering 3 live chat questions, and we're going to be running this thing out. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And also, someone mentioned something about the Lamborghini truck. No, I'm just joking. But anyways, jumping into our third to last question tonight. This one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who says, what do you guys think Putin's end goal is with this war to secure his legacy in Russia before he dies?
Maybe. I think, honestly, he has some delusion that he's going to be the new emperor of Russia. Because everyone keeps on saying that he's wanting to recreate the Soviet Union, but the land claims that he's making are not those of the Soviet Union. They're those of the Russian Empire, and also the fact that he made Russia's coat of arms. Let's see. the double-headed eagle of the Romanov family, I certainly believe that he is actually in some kind of a delusion that he could actually be the creator of a new Russian empire. I think that's actually what he's shooting for, and so he wants to achieve that before the end of his life, so that way he can crown himself the emperor of Russia and the protector of the Russian people and Christendom, which is technically what the Russian emperors always claimed. They always claimed they were protectors of the Eastern Orthodox faith, and that's also why they had this big beef with the Ottomans forever, is because they took over Constantinople, which is the seat of the Eastern Orthodox Church, and so the Russians said that they were defenders of the faith and the Eastern Orthodox Christians, and that's why they always went to war for the weirdest of reasons, is that that was their justification. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Ted Mitchell, who says, will the USA bring in more powerful weapons to be used against Russia, like the bunker busters, if this keeps going this a really bad way for Russia?
Possibly so, although there really isn't a lot of hardened structures to really use the bunker busters for in this particular instance. Bunker busters in the modern day are largely specialized to deal with hardened shelters at airfields, which once again the Russians have like none of. Like, they don't really have a lot of those, so the bunker buster might not really be that usable in most scenarios in this conflict. So we might see that different kinds of weapons are brought in, but that one might be a little bit too specialist, although they might still give it to the Ukrainians just in case they needed one. They got the right wrench for the right, the right wrench for the right thing. I'm losing the word right now. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Jaded, who says, do you think after the rejection of the ceasefire that the only way to really defeat Putin is economically?
I think the only way to defeat Putin is through superior firepower and economic means, really making the Ukrainians beat the Russians down, or their economy, their oil and gas production, down to non-existence, so that way we can see that the Russians are truly crippled and brought to their knees and will go to the negotiating table, or will escalate it farther, one way or the other. I think that really is the only way to see that this war may eventually end, or may boil over into something where we can force an end to it. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream at the top of the hour exactly. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this stream for all of y'all, and I also got to give a massive shout out to the 338,276 people that call the Elite Spring Army and the Enforcer channel their home. We are, of course, entirely honored and incredibly appreciative and thankful for all of y'all being here tonight, and if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. We've gotten 3,400 likes. What a number! Hey! And of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so then, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, slow Ukraine, and long live the Elite Spring Army. The Elite Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream once again tonight. And of course, we'll see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next night of War News streams. And also, if there is a short war video to make tomorrow, you'll be hearing from me midday as well for the news at that point in the day, obviously in the midday. But of course, probably another big day of news. We'll be waiting to see what the U.S. response is going to be to the Putin statements that were made today. That's the big thing I'm waiting for. So we'll be watching for that tomorrow. But be sure to join us tomorrow for that. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.